We are live.
We are live on Channel 4. Please do not swear. If you have the image, Christian.
That's
Hello.
working.
The
What?
The Squidzilla Inc. logo. So I can put it in.
Do I have it?
Story. Yep.
I have one somewhere. Where do I have it? This is a question.
Okay, I've done something with the window size again.
Yeah, in that.
There we go.
Logos.
There we go, everybody. I think that's working for me and for you guys as well.
How big of a logo do you want?
Awesome.
Doesn't matter. I can resize.
Let's do a little bit of setup, guys, and then we're going to get into it.
That one? But I think that might be really tiny.
That's fine.
Otherwise, I have the full 4K version of it.
Just check that it's actually showing as live on YouTube.
Which, that one has the details on it as well.
Grab that one. Much full.
So see-through black and white version as well.
It's saying we're live, although it's not like showing. There we go. There we go. Awesome. All right. I think it's a bit of a delay on stuff, but I think we are live. So I'll share this link with you.
Okay. Grab that in a moment.
Yeah, it's taking all of my... Christian, if you could just do a little story on the squid one as well.
Story?
Pop the story on Instagram-o.
Kablamo, yep.
Okay, well, we'll have to chop this segment off. I think we can do a little bit of editing in YouTube as a YouTube live anyway, but it's all good. So, should we start off?
Momentarily, I have your link. I'll put that in the story as well.
No. Just keep doing that. Hello, viewers. This is us not doing anything.
We're just still sort of setting up, I think.
This is, in fact, exactly how it is.
This podcast is about the background of the hobby, the ins and outs of why we end up doing what we do.
The sound's coming through, all right?
Excellent. We all love sound.
Yeah.
Announcements. Hey, everyone. Squidzilla Inc. just posted the video. Season 2, Episode 2, Painting Table Webcast. That's this video.
It's like we're already in it. We're being slower than we should be.
Sorry, we're a bit rusty. So we'll get there. If we share it out and then see what happens. So we'll start the podcast then. So
what's
quick
the
swig of
story?
water.
Glug, glug,
glug. So welcome to the Painting Table Podcast. Your host tonight is VulkanLifts. Above me, we've got KitbashConverts, and we've got a
Hello.
special guest with us today. We've got the one and only MerlynModels.
Hello there.
How are you doing today, guys?
Better than I could be.
Pretty good today, I think.
Getting through.
Yeah.
Crazy
Just
December, right?
slap it. Yeah, I mean, have you seen the
Bitterly cold.
temperatures today? Oh, I know what I did today. I went to see a nativity for my daughter, my youngest daughter,
Lovely.
and -6 this morning.
I live on the
Savage.
coastline. In summer, like the coastline is so much hotter. In winter, it's supposed to be not cold, but apparently it is.
Yeah, I mean it's frozen everywhere around here. So we're Norwich, Winsford, Cheshire area, you know, and like our town centre has been basically like a ice rink. So I just saw a picture of it before. My rabbit's having a little bit of a drink, so excuse the little the sound there. He's just sat beside me in his.
Don't accept it. Don't accept it at all. It's unprofessional. I'm kidding.
He can't go anywhere else. We might put him back downstairs later on. But
I'm kidding. It's clearly you making the noise.
Yeah, I'm just. So
A little bit of a
we're all
story
good.
on
Basically, on the Painting Table podcast, we're just going to go through our concurrent projects. We're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into all the little pictures everybody shared from today. So, from us as the regular host, we're trying to do what we can, and we're going to be posting and talking about what we've been doing. I'm going to be asking about a most recent game that you've played. And fun things like that. So we'll start off. We'll go round. We'll start with the special guest Merlyn. What have you been working on recently, dude? Because I'm going to pull some pictures up now, so you can, if you have your chat box open at the same time.
I've got the chat box open. So I've been working on a few things. Some of these that we've got in the chat already completed. Some of the ones that I've done incredibly recently. The first one on the list is a Model of the Month model from, I believe, the month before last, the Leagues of Votan. So I tried to paint the Emir Conglomerate, which are incredibly blue and red, but I didn't quite like the color scheme as it was, so I went for a non-metallic style.
Awesome.
And
it looks fantastic, man.
The head is like a Blood Bowl head
from one of the dwarf teams.
Yeah, because when you build the full dwarf team, you can build the entire thing, and then there's still heads left over choice. So I was like, these spare bits need to go to something, and I've got this Model of the Month that comes with a tiny little helmet, which I'm never ever going to use. I hate them. So I had to clip the braids off, file it down, and refile the grain of the hair in, and then try and get it to fit over the gun, which was more kit bashing than I'm used to. But it was, at the same time, it was also almost a bit swap, just a head swap, apart from tidying it up. So that was fairly quick, and I was able to get straight on painting, what I enjoy more so. It's not finished. Obviously, the base more work on it, but the fabrics and the leathers and the black areas on the fabric, they're all still being worked on. I've had a bit of advice on the backpack where I need to make that more shiny, but also more in keeping with the shoulders, the knees. It's been inspired by the work of Liam Paint Stuff, who is at the Horus Heresy event, painted Vulkan, in fact, which is
he did, yeah. I've used that as inspiration.
Yeah, but I asked him for a little bit of information there as to how I can improve some of my models, and the painting community is just really helpful and eager for more people to be painting.
Definitely,
yeah, that's
mate.
the current project. There's a load of more other things here that I've finished in the last year. But,
we'll go through each one. So, like,
what I quite like about that little guy there, you may or may not know if you've never seen half the stuff that I've got on my Instagram. I had been building squats for ages. I did a full kill team, and I was like, I could do a full army like this. So I've got all the bits and I'm building through, and then they release all this, so now I've got to change all the weapons from AdMech ones to that. But the synergy works quite well. But my kill team, I painted in those colors before knowing anything about them because they didn't exist. And then it's like, right, okay, but I changed my color scheme for the army to cream armor and orange overalls. And now, like, everyone and the dog is doing cream armor and orange overalls, and I've kind of, it's slightly infuriating, but at the same time, I kind of fully expect it now because over the last like 20 years of doing anything in the hobby, every time I do anything myself, GW then come up afterwards and go, "Oh yeah, here's our version, and it's better than the one that you did."
It's like deciding colors is decided by the same triads that everyone does because it's good for the eye.
Yeah.
Like, it's a huge, massive coincidence. That happens a lot, and it's just like, but I did it first. Damn it.
Yeah, then it makes
It's
you not want to
nice
paint
in a
it when
way.
you know somebody else has done it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
always get that.
It's
Enjoy your
nice in
hobby
the way
project.
that it's nice in the way that it confirms that what I did was right in the first place, and not that just some insane random color picking of a lizard brain child sort of thing.
Kitbash, I am the Lizard Queen.
Yeah,
Oh,
so
I'm
like,
a human. Okay.
I like
Sorry,
red and
Kitbash.
blue. Red and blue is good. Spider-Man wears red and blue. I will paint my doors red and blue.
I
Everyone else
particularly
does too.
like the armor as well. So I think the red, how you've gone up to the pink as well. So I really like the dark, deep gradient that you've put in and you've blended in, and taking it all the way up into that pink and white. For me, that's quite striking, and I really like it. Your eyes are drawn to it.
Kind of makes me think of like ruby gems,
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
or
get that.
like the way they usually get painted. It's like
yeah.
it's
In a
wearing
way, yeah.
crystalline armor or something.
I think you use a lot of white as well to make it look super shiny.
Yes, it is. I spoke to Handarian about it after I'd got it to that stage. I was not happy with the backpack, and I'd learned some of the wrong lessons whilst doing the volume highlighting. That when you do a circular shape, you should have a thin bead along the top where the light is, and that's not necessarily how it works. Especially when you've got different textures on a material that you're trying to suggest. It depends on whether you want it shiny or if you want it to look like happen to have a sheen to it. And yeah, so say you had like a 90 car, that's not necessarily going to be super duper reflective. It's going to be like half and half. And the difference between gloss and matte, it's hard to figure out how things should be painted. I'm starting to refer more and more to reference images. There's a book that I got recently, Kirill Kaneyev, frequently asked questions about painting, and I need to go through it. It's A4 size and it's about an inch thick, and it's filled with reference images. So I will be spending a lot of Christmas book and just trying to do some examples from that, different things.
It's good practice.
Oh, for sure. And the best thing about Model of the Month is you're not invested in an army. You can still practice techniques out. You can just grab a free model from the store, and that's what I wanted to do with this, because I don't have an army of squads. I just have the one, and I was like, let's try some things that I wouldn't normally do, and that elsewhere.
Yeah, it's a good idea, man, and especially it's a free model. But it looks fantastic, dude. Like, cracking work. I can't wait to see that finished. When you got the time, we'll keep things moving. Talk us through your. Well, I keep pressing the end button by accident. It's my push to talk button. 2 seconds.
The blue ultramarine.
There we go. The ultramarine, the El Clasico, super classic looking ultramarine.
Okay, so the thing with this model is it's a second edition metal model. I having spoken to Garth, can't remember what his channel is, but he told me that not only is it a second edition model, but it's a captain, and it comes with or without a cloaked backpack. Mine didn't have either, so I just had to ask around. Unfortunately for me, he said that it did come with one backpack or the other backpack. So this isn't quote unquote wrong if you're a purist. Obviously, that's your own hobby; you can do whatever you want with. But with this one, with it being so old, I wanted to very deliberately go for a color scheme that people would have painted with that model back at the time. And obviously, it's an ultramarine. But for those who are post 5th edition, ultramarines weren't always gold trim or silver trim or whatever the company markings were. They were often yellow. So I went for that and went ham on it. And as you can see on the gems, there's a full gradient from orange all the way through red, black up to white, and
I can see that.
was really fun to do. But what was more practice for me at that point, because I hadn't done the squat that you saw, was trying to do non-metallic metal on it, but also keeping the saturation relatively similar to everything else. So it looks kind of comic booky. There is no lead belcher on this model. This is all
Dude, I was going to say that
correction.
I actually thought this was a metallic, so you've sold me on the NMM there, which is bang on.
Well, this is why it didn't do so well on Instagram, because people just went, "Oh yeah, that's all right, I guess." But
Yeah.
if I handed you the model and you turned it in the light, the shine is not going to change direction. It's gonna be the same. Like,
yeah, it's
That's
always the thing.
that's why you need one.
It's too
I
convincing.
need one of the.
I went to.
That's why you need one of these bad boys.
What's
Little
that one?
rotating
Oh, the spinny
platforms.
dude, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've got one of them, but it's not as nice as that one. I've got one that's
This is just sprayed black. That's all.
I do need
I'll do that
to
with mine, actually.
change mine because it's currently transparent at the top, and it
Yeah,
causes
that's like
unnecessary
mirrored.
effect.
That one was.
Yeah,
Say again?
mine's a mirrored one as well.
But this one here was it was mirrored, and then there's LED lights on the inside of it.
Right.
So I've just completely covered it in Vallejo black PVC primer,
I mean, that'll do.
That will.
and it just seems to do the trick.
There's a funny thing with this model actually, because I brought it with me to Manchester. Let's make it Orky Keris. She had a meetup, and Kirioth happened to come along, and me and him were sat at a painting table, just going through the new contrast paints, because this was the weekend of the paint crusade that GW had. We were just painting a load of skinks, but I was like, Kiri, I've got some models to show you, and I pulled this one out. And he saw it and he was like, "Oh yeah, that's quite nice," and handed it back. And I was like, "Yeah, there's no lead belcher there." And he went, "Hang on a minute, pass that back."
Yeah, but you're having to say that. That's the funny and interesting thing about it.
Yeah. So then he looked at it again and he turned it and he was like, "Holy crap!"
Yeah, it's painted in your unique style in like an old school way with that NMM, and it's perfect.
But the funny thing is that I wasn't learning like non-metallic metal the way people were suggesting I should learn non-metallic metal. I was literally going, what is a reference image for these kind of shapes? Where they happen to be lead belcher in the image, I'll produce shades that look like that because that looks metallic enough, so that'll do. And then I've done it, and it looks too close to it, and people are thinking it is, and I'm like, damn it.
You've got the metallic reflection. You've got it's non-lead belcher. It's a completely different. It's not non-metallic metal. You've replicated the actual metallic paints in a non-metallic way, and metallic paints don't reflect like metal.
Yeah,
they don't look right, which is the problem. Which is why people do an MM, because it's not metallic paints are not metallic. It's like because non-metallic metal is like painting chrome or polished steel or whatever, and real life reflections. So unless you're painting with chrome paint, you're never going to get the same reflection. And I keep forgetting, even though you're talking about it right now, I keep looking at that picture and my brain keeps going, that's lead belcher.
It's trickery.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. Like, it's actually kind of disappointing, because the whole point of me doing non-metallic metal is to try and improve my ability painting a certain way to get better at understanding all of that. And if it just looks like lead belcher, sure, that's a compliment to what it is. But at the end of the day, that's a lot of time to achieve something you could have done with another paint.
Yeah.
You could have painted
you
with
could
lead
have lead belted it, oiled it, and dry brushed it with Ironbreaker or something.
Yeah, it's a weird one. But like, with this being literally a metal model, there's a thing to it which is you might not have expected. So in the end of the barrel, there is actually no drilled hole. I haven't drilled a hole. That is a black circle with a highlight line.
It looks sweet, man. Like you've nailed that again. Let's have another close up.
And then on the the muzzle where you've got the light would go sideways, so you don't have the flash going forwards. that's the same kind of very light highlight on the underside and dark highlight on the top side. But the dark highlight is different from the recessed black because, well, I don't want to suggest Dean, so I've just left it black.
Okay.
It looks magical. It's very cool. It's very quirky as well. The old school.
Kind of feel
thinking.
like I've got that model somewhere.
It's a bit of nostalgia, and
might
it's
do.
what I wanted to do with it.
Well,
And
So I've got a load of second edition Chaos metal that a friend of mine dropped off the other day. Because I've now got 2 second edition box sets. And so I've got a load of little Gretchens and Orcs and things. One of them is obviously the first one that I bought, but the other one he bought at the same time, and then he put around and was like, clearing out my dad's house, I've got all these, I don't do them anymore, do you want them? I'm like, sure, whatever. And it's just a ton, like loads of metal Chaos Marines, Chaos Terminators, all of them just big pile of metal ones. I've got a load of lead Terminators that I've been stripping because they appear to be covered in what seems like white emulsion paint. So I've got them in paint stripper. It's not really going too well, but so I've got a load of lead Terminators too, and plastic Space Hulk ones.
An
Second edition stuff.
The paint stripper could be brake fluid if they're metal.
I might try that then.
There's
see
that
what happens with that one.
BioStrip.
BioStrip. Yeah. Only seem to be able to buy that in America though. So
I'm gonna make this absolutely clear. If anyone wants to strip models with brake fluid, make sure they're metal ones. Resin ones will die, and plastic ones will not last long. Metal ones are fine.
Methylated spirit is quite good for getting rid of plastic. Not getting rid of plastic ones, getting the paint off of plastic ones. Because I did the Blood Bowl set in that, and they're fine. But the only thing you got to do with that is make sure you get rid of the paint on a piece of paper, because once the methylated spirit dries out, the paint goes back to being hard again. So if you do it in the sink and then forget about it, you've then got to repaint strip the sink afterwards because you've got hard paint everywhere and get shot with that.
Well, after
and you can't let that go down the sink either.
Yes.
I rarely strip my models, but I just can't be bothered with it. I end up just leaving it and putting it in a pile and then not coming back to it. And then one day, eventually, might come back to it. But I don't know, stripping just faff, isn't it? I'd rather sell it on and then get a new one.
I think mine. I was stripping those ones because they were, like I said, the second edition metals and the first edition Blood Bowl stuff. So I kind of wanted to repaint it. So yeah, some scouts. I've got scouts, little scouty boys, little short, fat Space Marine scouts. So I've got a load of bits and pieces like that I kind of want to do the same thing that you're doing. Just as soon as I've finished doing all of these guys and the other guys and the other guys and the other guys, I'm going to get all the second edition ones. And I'm thinking Dark Angels do some bits and pieces like that, get that nice cream Terminator thing going on.
Yeah.
Deathwings.
Yeah, there's some real nice stuff to do with Deathwing because of obviously Space Hulk is an ever-present nostalgia. Like even when games are current, they still paint them in the second edition, third edition, fourth edition style of Deathwing. So if the more recent version is even smoother, there's always kind of like this nostalgia there. But in terms of nostalgia, there's a painter that I'd like to mention, which is Goblin Green 2021, and they paint very much like a second edition through to edition style. They're one of the people that I was told to look at their work when I was painting this and struggling with it. The original colors were actually that I found out through Midwinter trying to do his. But I've been talking with Goblin Green 2020 since then. Because when I was shown his work, he was only on like 500, 600 followers, and now he's past 10K because his work is just that crisp, clean. And,
almost 16.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been talking back and forth with him, showing models to each other. And on the path to Golden Demon, he was showing me his Dreadnought as he was doing it, and I was showing him my Assassin. And he was like, "Oh, I'm not sure how this will go," and then there was like bits and bobs with it, and then he got commended, and I was so happy for him. I just about got to find him before he had to run off and join all the other commendeds, and shake his hand, because we've been trying to find each other the entire weekend. But when I did this Space Marine, I was hoping to get anywhere near as clean as he'd achieved his.
Yeah. Just looking at his stuff at the moment, and it's like he does them 2nd edition style banners, backpacks, the Blood Angels with the blue helmets, the Ultramarine 2nd Company with the yellow stripes like you've got on there. But he does them in the same colours, the same palette, but what looks like today's standard for heavy metal.
Exactly.
So edge highlighting everywhere. You got the gradients and everything, and it's not just like they look photo perfect, and it's that Dreadnought's phenomenal. It's just like
fantastic. I'm not going to say like I'm anywhere near on that style, but it was a joy to do this model, because just getting those gradients and going for Zenithal over an heavy metal look. I did some bits on the bolter, as you can see, where it's all highlighted like that. But there's painting isn't a competition, even when there are competitions. But there is no comparison in these two models. You look at them and you go, "Yep, that's the better one."
Yeah,
which is fine.
His
everyone's
stuff is
on their own
good.
painting journey with their own amount of time that they can spend on it.
Yeah.
So where's he getting these unopened boxes from?
Your next miniature, there's a bit of a tale around this guardsman as well.
Yes, there is. So this guardsman, was painted. Originally, it was painted within the space of an hour. It's the current image is not painted in an hour. That's 7 hours. But I was watching Heroes Brush Hour when Darcy Bonner Creations was on there, and I'd met her at the Horus Heresy event. So I was like, "Oh, Darcy's on. I'll go check her out." And whilst I'm watching, on that channel they had essentially a challenge between her and Dan to a model in an hour, and there were redeems to make them sing, like use one hand or the other hand. Whichever one there was a dominant, they'd have to use the other. Take glasses off, close one eye, all these kind of things to slow them down. So I made her sing a load of Disney songs. So we get to the end of that. Well, she loved Disney songs, and her voice was amazing. But so she was glad to have like good support in chat, and she can sing Disney songs and keep painting because she knows them really well. But Zombie Bunny Creations happened to be in chat, and he said Merlin should be on next. And Darcy was like, "Oh hell yeah, Merlin should be on next." And I was like, "I guess I have to message them now."
Let's get this sorted.
I wasn't particularly like sleeping well that night, which is why I was able to watch it at all, because it is a 3 a.m. Thing for us in the UK, 9 p.m. for Central Standard Time US. So if I'm on it, that's a 3 a.m. stream that I have to speed paint something for an hour, and I started painting this guardsman. By the end, it was 50-50. There was about 40 people watching, which was really cool. And then I said people should vote for Andrews because he did a better job in the space of the hour. I'm not gonna say vote for me, I'm the best. I'm gonna look at the model and go, nah, he did well. Vote for him. And he won by 1. Well done. He keeps rubbing it in my face that he quote unquote beat a Golden Demon finalist pin winner, and I'm like, yeah, but like the Golden Demons, it's like people spend over 28 hours on one model. Karaoke spent over 13 months on his entry. Like, it's not renowned for like painting one model for an hour. So more like
they don't do a speed painting category, do they?
Exactly. So I was just like, the reason why I'm on the channel is to get faster execution while trying to keep quality up. So I didn't use contrast. I did almost no dry brushing, and I went for the classic method. This was a rookie mistake, but it did mean that I like cut corners in ways that I'm not used to cutting corners. And then afterwards, I was like, this isn't good enough. I have to keep going, and I did another 6 hours and ended up.
It looks like you went down the rabbit hole, but it's definitely worth it.
Glazing is so much fun.
I think that would be a good 24-hour stream, really. On the hour every hour, you have a speed painting competition against different model, maybe even like So the streamers, like we have a 24 individual models, and we just got to paint all of them in that 24-hour period. But then have guests on every hour who also have to paint their own model in that hour.
Well,
Just go.
As it happens, Kitbash, when I get to 1,000, I have already agreed with AC Miniatures that I will do a 24-hour stream to celebrate it. That was about 300 followers ago, and this was a bad plan. But I'm desperately needing ideas for what to do on that. So help.
Well, that's an idea.
But yeah,
multi-stream.
Exactly, could get people on multiple times, so long as they remember it's family friendly. It'll all be fine.
You do run your stream as family friendly a lot of the time as well. So is that just a conscious choice to keep things neat and tidy and open to everybody?
So it's a weird one because I'm autistic and some of my mods have kids. So as with both of these things in mind, reading text and trying to assume what someone's tone of voice is, it's just way harder to know what their intent is if they're swearing at. Obviously, you can get to know someone over time, but having it family friendly makes it a hell of a lot simpler for me. And that's that way I can also have my mods not having to worry about their kids running into the room and overhearing things that they shouldn't hear. But yeah, it's just that really. I had a stream once which was part of Hobbyfest, ran by Nerd Princess, and she was on with Alfield Wildrunner and partner getting his username now. But they were all meant to be in cosplay. I was in cosplay, and Nerd Princess wasn't. She was by her fireside, and she'd asked me to organize this. It was meant to be an hour long, and lo and behold, the one person to do any swearing is the person organizing the whole thing. It was just like, Frankie, why?
Yeah.
But usually there's no issue with family. Everyone respects it. There's only a couple of others, including House Firehawk, who actually do it. What I really like about this model though is that I was able to grab bits from all sorts of different kits, including some Victoria miniatures stuff, and just add to it. So there's the back, the pouches on the shoulder. There's the pistol on the waist. There's a few bags on the can't see, but because it's Acadian, I made a choice, a silly choice, but a choice to paint the eyes purple.
As it should be.
Yeah, okay. Now that you've said that, I can see it. Because before, when I looked at it before, I couldn't quite make out the colour. It looked quite red.
Yeah, if you don't realise it, it kind of looks like it's almost an artifact. Because you're like, why would it be purple? But
yeah.
No, we know why they're purple.
Yes, so for those who don't know, Cadia is a planet that existed, was blown up in front of the Eye of Terror, and the people who were raised there looked at it so much that their eyes changed purple as part of their genetic code over time.
The
Maelstrom?
Yeah, the Maelstrom and the malingering. That's not the right word, is it?
Cicatrix maledictum.
Basically, just because chaos is nearby, and it's just sort of seeped into the planet on some sort of more intrinsic level. The Ethereum and all that lot.
Yeah.
Without doing too much mutation either.
Yeah.
Or too much corruption, because I think.
I mean, your eyes changing purple is probably the best you can hope for when you're that close to it all.
Yeah.
I mean, the alternative is having extra arms, and then other people with extra arms mistaking you for friendly allies.
Yeah. Well,
just standard guardsmen.
We've got a lot of pictures to get through, so I'm going to speed us up a little bit. You've got one just beneath the guardsman, who we would like to see the before and after picture as well, if you do have that, Merlin.
Of the guardsman.
The guardsman, before I completely move us on to your next one, because he's...
This is the step-by-steps for the first one we had look at, isn't it?
Is this up on your Instagram now, Merlin?
No, that's not up on my Instagram right now, because although I've included it in the final images, but I haven't done the finished piece because I didn't want to put it up and have the algorithm decide that the final piece wasn't as good as the last whip, so I've left it alone for a while. Instagram to be like, Right, I'm going to put this into.
We'll want to see it because obviously the 7 hours extra you put in is a huge, huge difference.
Oh yes, yes. It just looked terrible, and I was not happy with it.
Because I remember seeing the thing and I was like, man, that is speed painting challenges are bloody hard. Like they
Yeah.
really are.
I think it depends what you're painting as well. Like I've
Yeah.
speed painted a Gene Stealer before in no time, although this was in the noughties, but it's sort of like purple, lighter purple, job done. So it's kind of pretty easy, but like putting, you're doing like bits of metal, cloth, belt, etc., and it's kind of gets a bit more in depth, especially when you like the miniature itself is quite a complex combination of bits and pieces.
It should be there now.
You message.
Oh, there we go. So we've got an hour in.
The thing here is that if you compare those, obviously it doesn't look very good on the left. It's more than good enough if you're doing a huge army in a short period of time.
Yeah, yeah.
I've got all the base colors in, and the skin tones are roughly there, but like
It's tournament friendly.
Yeah, exactly. It's fine. But in terms of the speed paint challenge, Andrew has been doing a lot of them. Knows exactly what he's doing. Made all the right decisions, and he decided to do a terrain piece with a statue on it. There was a lot of ease of access for brush on the statue that he did. He used contrast paints a lot and used dry brushing and a lot of metallic effects, and that was the way to go. And
Yeah.
I did not make the right choices.
Is that slap
I would
chop?
say,
Is that when you contrast them and dry brush and highlight? Is that slap chop?
don't you zenithal highlight first, zenithal highlight, then you contrast, don't you?
You can do
and then
that.
that gives you.
I've not tried the technique myself.
I think if you're doing speed painting, contrast should be banned. It's like,
it's
it's
a
little bit cheating. A little bit cheating. You can water down your paints and do a gloss, a glaze. That's fine, but like,
I'll just do an incredibly
literal
thick
speed
glaze,
paints to
it's
do
fine.
a speed painting. It kind of defeats the whole point. It's like, doing speed running stuff, but
I mean, for
having
sure,
sort of fast travel.
you could bash out quite a bit in an hour with a slap chop method, as long as you're neat. Like,
Well, the thing is, he did an incredibly neat job, and he deserved like to win, which is why I've told people to vote for him at the end, because I saw the picture and I was like, that's not just quick, that's neat and pretty. So I was a little bit like, I have made the wrong choices, because a guardsman, there's a lot of like angles, especially when he's kneeling down, to try and get details that people can see but you can't get to easily. Whereas a statue is cone shaped,
and it's going to take a dry brush as well.
Brush angle. And that was just the right decision.
Yeah. I mean, yours has got a lot more little intricate details, so I think you've definitely done it justice now. Like looking at it, it looks fantastic. Yeah, I haven't painted a guardsman in a long time, but he looks fab, man.
It turns out that like it was the first guardsman I'd painted in about 3 years. Well, Cadian, correction.
Yeah.
First Cadian I painted in about 3 years.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, I know this. It'll be fine. Ah!
Not like this.
Yeah. The last guardsman I painted was, I think, 1 centimeter tall.
Epic.
I got well, not exactly. I did like a little miniature diorama thing.
Oh.
And can you see all the guys on there?
I remember you doing this.
What you could do is you could take a
bunch
picture
of guardsmen,
put it in.
And then there's a mech on the
Yeah,
inside.
it's
but,
very cool.
That's really nice.
That should be on the pictures, Christian, so we could talk about it.
This was last year, that was.
Yeah, it was last year's project. Well,
but there's some 3D prints by a guy called Brexit.
Nice name.
Sensitive subject, but they're quite good. They're just Cadians, but instead of their little Cadian helmet, they got pitbull helmets.
Nice. Dogs
of war sort of thing. And they got Ogrins with the same kind of helmets as well. They look great, although they have French bulldog helmets instead.
Such as your raison d'etre, just like, if I haven't swapped the heads, what am I doing?
Yeah.
Well, let's let Merlin talk us through his paint scheme image.
Just the 6-picture gradients.
Yeah.
Okay, so what I wanted to do is like continue to take photos from the same angle for the model every time I did what I thought was a significant change, so that people could see that as I go through. But also to show the mistakes that are made along the way.
Yeah.
So when it's bad plastic, that's literally just the converted head with the filed bits on it. It's in the same pose. There's nothing much to say there. But we get to the second image, and I've got as many of the block colors in as possible because I wanted to practice non-metallic metal in a style that was dissimilar from the ultramarine. But with that being the case, you've still got to block the colors in. So I decided, okay, what's roughly the mid-tone? I'll go for Mechanica Standard Grey and I'll glaze in both directions and then see where I get to. So I focused on doing the flash tones on the head, and I'd had advice on that previously from Chris P Minis or Perry Miniatures, or and with that, I realized that the Mohawk has to have its own shadows because it doesn't make sense. It would be too bright, even though above the model you can see those shadows, which is weird for a zenithal highlight. It would look weirder from the front. So there's a lot of reds and purples shaded into those recesses to try and give it a sense of depth beyond just the creams that are usually recommended by Citadel's painting guides. And the eyes were a massive faff because they always are
quite small, don't they? Because he's got
one of them is just smaller than the other. Quite frankly, the model's eyes are not.
This is a relatively new Blood Bowl. I mean, the Blood Bowl kit they used is probably about 4 or 5 years old, but it's still fairly new. But to me, looking at your process there, I find it quite interesting that you went with the non-metallic first. But like you said, it's because you wanted to practice that. That was in your mind when you were painting it. It's like, I want to do more practice on my NMM. So I've done that first. Because like normally I try to work in to out, so like the most difficult bits to get to, and then work my way outwards. Or like if you're able to airbrush a big area, you'll end up doing like the armor first because you've airbrushed that bit. So it's an interesting change.
It is, but at the same time, it was kind of because I didn't really know exactly I wanted to replicate what I'd seen Liam paint stuff had done with his red armor, and I'd done more with like a flat grey metallic than say a cold or a warm metallic. So although I was practicing it, I sort of knew what I was doing from previous stuff. So I went for the comfortable section of the model for me and went straight for all the metallics. And at the same time, the joints at the knees, they have metallic bolts in them because those were actually really hard angles to get to. So I was like, let's do all of those as quickly as possible. So I don't really have to come back to them, and everything else should be nice, easy brush strokes.
You're worried about getting red on it. Like...
Shaun of the Dead reference there. But at the same time, I've been using some new brushes that I'm not using. Kalinsky Sable brushes. So I was trying to see what I could leave on them. And again, with it being like a throwaway model, it's just that much easier to do it on and
just jump into it.
Yeah, exactly. And when you see where I get to the third image, I've got a rough model that will be more than fieldable so long as it's the base. But that's not what I wanted from the model. I wanted to get this metallic look on the red. And I realized, having spoken to a good few people, I should have started with black and gone up. So I started with red and dialed it back down, which is fine. It shows you can fix mistakes.
There's a couple ways of doing it. Like some people start with a mid-tone, then put the shadow, and then put the highlights in. Some people go all the way from black all the way up. Some people go the other way, don't they? Like, it's a personal preference.
In my head, I always try to start darkest and then build up to the lighter parts, but I always tend to start dark, put too much mid-tone in, do the light bit, then go back and do more dark, and then have to do a bit more mid-tone, and then do the top, and I just kind of, whatever, as long as it kind of ends up in the right place at the end, and I'm sort of, I mean, I'm nowhere near your level of painting with that kind of stuff, but it's sort of like, that's, my brain goes, do the dark bit first, and I think that stems back to how I was taught to paint the miniatures back in the late 90s, early thousands, because 2000s, because it was like everyone used Chaos Black Spray, and then you would do. I collected skeletons at the time as well for Warhammer. So you start with black, bleach bone,
Yeah,
bang,
it's got
done.
that
Next one. So
common
the
mantra, isn't it?
the
It's like
black is
get
the
3
shadow. Yeah. So if you miss a bit when you've started with black, then it's not such a big problem, because you can go, oh well, that's where the shadow is anyway, because that's why I've missed it, because it's behind the bolter, or it's in that pouch underneath the sideway. You've got the armpit down, you're not quite seeing it, so it doesn't stand out as much as if you started with the light colors, and then you kind of, if you start with a light color and then you miss a shadow part, then it's like, what's he got under there? Why is that so bright?
Yeah.
Yeah, it does save you a lot of time, because there are those brush angles that you just can't get to later on in the process, so it helps out. But yeah, it's a weird one. You have to kind of pick your battles, and I'm very much used to sub-assembly. So with this, because it was Model of the Month, because I got it whilst I was at Warhammer World, you have to kind of build it there and put it in the box and then leave. I specifically asked, hey, can I leave the helmet on? I like having it in bits so that I can get those nice brush angles, so that darkness isn't necessarily like a requirement of the priming process.
Yeah.
Although I end up using Chaos Black half the time anyway. But I like being able to have that control, even though I hate the process of sub-assembly.
Yeah, I hate
Just
sub-assembly.
takes so much longer.
Yeah, there's only a few models to do it on. Like, I'll try to avoid it where possible, because like if you're not going to see a bit, you're not going to see it at all. You know.
Like this has been sub-assembled for a year.
Oh,
Yeah.
crazy chasm, or whatever his name is, the Inquisitor.
Inquisition guy. Yeah.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Conduit, the Emperor's Might.
Indeed. It's the point I was like halfway through posting it, people was like talking about weird cigarettes, sandpaper cigarettes, and I'm like, what are you talking about? And it's TTS. Oh,
Yeah.
whatever.
So it's send you down a right rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Well, so going through, we've got a couple more images from yourself. I'll do the mini Gargant first, because we'll talk through your game, which will be involving your knights and stuff. So
Okay.
I've got. I keep clicking the wrong button. Sorry. There we go, Mr. Gargant.
Cute little guy.
I think it's a Gargant, isn't it? It's like
it's a stomper.
Stomper.
Also, hello, Glowing Cloth. How you doing?
He's
Yeah,
a
so
watcher.
the stomper is a mixture of styles. We've got with Death Skulls, there's a bit of a problem. With Death Skulls, you've got a lot of references for what they look like in third, fourth, etc. forward edition, where there's a lot of blacks, blues, and whites. But for second edition, there's this hodgepodge of red, yellow, and blue, with lots of weird flame pattern. And in parallel to that, usually when Death Skulls are shown in the image, there's a load of Goths, Bad Moons, there's a load of like any other faction that they could use to do vehicles. They used that instead. So there's an incredibly small amount of Death Skulls images for vehicles. So I had to hodgepodge both like an 8th edition and a 2nd edition style to steal the look of the infantry and the modern look of Death Skulls to try and get this together. Checkered patterns wasn't really their thing back. Flames were, and the red, yellow shoulder pads, all the rest. But again, this was me trying to do comic book style non-metallic metal at the same time. There's no lead belcher there.
And again, another
that looks more
example.
convincing as non-metal metal and less lead belchery.
It does a bit. It's very smooth.
As you can tell, like the Ultramarine was before that as well.
Yeah, but this was a Golden Demon entry, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and although it didn't get anything, I was very happy to have entered it, because the amount of people who mentioned it to me and I saw smile and heard go, "Oh, look at that stomper!" That just made me happy, because there's a bit of nostalgia, and I wanted people to smile with it, and I knew that in that category of small scale, there's going to be it's an irony basically. Small scale winners tend not to be small. They tend to be like Warlord Titans and
Yeah.
Iconoclasts and some of the Aeronautica stuff that's out more recently. And I'm not sure if it's because the judges are basing it on the sheer amount of detail and effort that goes into it, or if it's just the fact that these are modern kits that exist that they want to promote. Either
Yep.
way, they are right. There is more detail to it, and it is a more modern kit. But with this model, I added way more detail than actually exists on it because those checkered patterns aren't part of plastic.
No.
And it's so small. It's like this big, whereas the Iconoclast is like that big.
Yep.
So the area for error in a kit like that is huge. So yeah, it was fun to enter. I'm glad I did, and I might actually re-enter it because the thing with Golden Demon is if you don't win anything, then you can re-enter it. But there's also another stipulation in small scale where you can have up to 3 models of a similar type as part of the one entry. So if I paint
Okay.
up another 2 Stompers and put them in as a unit, that might go across better.
Yeah.
Maybe have a little diorama base with them.
Yeah.
These ones plastic.
Yeah, this is plastic. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
So the Epic 40,000 ones.
Yep.
Yep.
Just need to grab something.
Because what I like about that the style there, like you said, where you've kind of gone, you've taken what it's like now and what it was like then. That's exactly what I did with the squats. Because all I had to work with the squats was the vague examples of them from first edition, and then every single other reference is Epic 40,000. And they're the same thing. It's like, what are you wearing? Bright green clothes, bright yellow clothes, bright pink. You're like, what's going on with these colors? Like, they just went mental for the color schemes, and then they kind of brought them all down back to earth again. So I ended up looking at it was AdMech ones and the squat ones from Epic to then see where they kind of met in the middle. Did the same sort of process, and that's probably what they've kind of done with the Votan lot, where they've taken those examples and kind of work them into the more modern aesthetic. But that's lovely. I the checkered patterns is sort of that's like an iconic thing from back then. Like every army had some sort of form of that checkered pattern, and it was never like an embossed type thing. It was always done by hand. Goths with theirs, and orcs a lot of checker patterns with orcs. But like I was saying about those Dark Angels Terminators with their little plate things, they always had like a green checker on there as well. So it was just sort of someone just had just the hots for checkers back then, and it sort of
maybe it's part.
I think that's brilliant. They're iconic. They are. Yeah, it's just a lovely little model. Those are.
I thoroughly enjoyed doing it, and I think I spent like a couple of afternoons, and that was it. Because I was having so much fun with it that I just went, I'll do this, and I'll do that, and it just went. The time disappeared, and I went, that's the first entry done. I had like other entries that needed finishing that were next to me that I was intimidated by, and this one was just fun, and it was great. But I'm going to talk about the checkered patterns a bit. We just mentioned with that being how it is, I'm just going to drag the window across so I'm at least looking roughly at the. So with the white area that is like a grey gradient, that is it's glazed from the top down to the bottom.
Right.
Oh.
You can very easily see that like there's almost a zenithal suggestion on the white through to the grey, but it is consistent from panel to panel to panel to panel.
Yeah.
It's not each tile has the same gradient, which is what the blue has. And the reason for that is because I was trying to suggest that the blue panels were on top of the white and the white panels was just the background.
Oh, I see.
Interesting.
Okay, when you look at it a bit more, yeah, you've kind of made it. Yeah. Okay,
so
I can
each one
see.
of the blue panels is glazed independently of each other. The white ones is glazed as one entire piece. The thing is, I drew it out as blue and white to make sure I could get the shape right. So I had to glaze it on the go, as opposed to going, I'll do all the white and then I'll do blue on top of it, because I didn't know how messy it would go. So I stuck to the primary colors of like white and blue, and then did this process afterwards. So it was quite tricky trying to keep that white gradient through across the whole thing.
Looks awesome,
after having put the blue in.
It's telling
and
a little tale within the model as you work in it.
yeah, and
because you can see it happening in some from like an orky sense of doing it, where they've boss said paint it white, and then boss says put blue squares on, so they just stick these blocks of blue shiny things on top.
Hey, Umi, I said I wanted blue squares on the white squares.
Perfect.
All right, then. Whatever you say, boss.
Well, I think it looks
think
fantastic. I really enjoyed seeing this when you showed us this pick, and it's just looks so much fun to work on. You've really like pushed yourself with your NMM again, and I think again you've learned a lot from it, and you've applied that to your latest stuff, and it's been following you, seeing you grow as well. It's quite amazing to see it. So I think it should have had a commendation because it's really cute and it's really fun and it's bringing back those 80s old school vibes.
The quality of the competition was incredibly high standard. There was a lot of people who got finalist pins who did better than and not commended. But the one thing that I found kind of weird about the whole thing is that I managed to go to a nearby store that sells train sets of sorts and found this flock grass. But of course, it's a very old style train set flock, so it's unlike the ultramarine where you can look at it and you go, oh yeah, that'd be fine on a Blood Bowl pitch. With this one, it's got like these flecks of blue and red and like all sorts of other bits in the grass, and it's very second edition. I couldn't get more second edition than it.
The green's so vibrant as well.
I was going to say, I was looking at it and it's kind of like that doesn't look like standard static flock these days. I mean, I remember when static grass came out and the GW shop were like, check this out. And you're like, oh my God, it looks like real grass. Because we were using static foam flock before was kind of like, like little tiny bits of green stuff. Like someone had blended the green sponge up or something like that.
Probably was.
And the main reason I mention it is not just to be like, oh my God, isn't that nice? But also, if people do you want to do epic, the smaller the train set style of terrain, the closer you're going to get to a realistic epic looking base.
Yeah.
And that's something that GW just don't really sell. They don't really aim for even the 8mm scale that they currently sell. They don't really aim at telling you how to paint things at that scale because the texture paint is built for 28mm. Everything else is like not quite right. So you have to look at other things that are already scaled similarly and go for that.
It looks tough and it's definitely quite small. And hopefully we're going to bring some of this into play when we do some Titanicus in 2023.
Yeah, I would love to get around to painting that.
So we've had a little chat about it.
Got mine on release, still haven't finished painting it yet.
Yeah, well, I think I've got like a warlord that's like 90% painted, but then it was done so long ago I'd want to repaint it now.
Yeah.
Because, you learn so much when you dedicate more time. So I may go back and have a little alteration. But I've not got any pictures of that for now, but we'll do a Titanicus specific because we were going to have Quill and Tripwire join us as well, and we probably would have brought up some more Titanicus stuff because I think they're feeling the itch and quite liking the look of the game. So I'll save my I've played quite a few games of it, so I was going to give you a little rundown of the rules and stuff, but we'll save that for next time.
If we are doing another one for Adeptus Titanicus, I have a story about my warlord, which is like how that got to be in my hands. So if I can do that now or I can do that then.
We'll save it for then because we'll have a dedicated Titanicus because Christian's also got a bit as well. I've got some and some of the other lads have. We've not yet coaxed Warhammer Ozen. But before we move on to Christian's little breakdown, I'll ask you, so what was the last game you played? And you've got 2 pictures here showing us. But yeah, how did your game go? Like, because you don't get to play that often.
I really don't get to play that often. And it's mostly because I keep trying to get my models completed.
Yeah.
And it was just something that we raised for trying to discuss how to get things done. And it's all about prioritization, and it means that I don't get to play games. So with the picture that you can see there, that is that one. it is a picture of a 3,000 versus 3,000 point game with 4 players, including Hedgehog, Gus the Hutt, Too Many Sprues, and myself at a streamer meetup that you unfortunately couldn't go because of your anniversary.
Yeah.
But it was meant to be myself versus Hedgehog. Hedgehog had done so many Chaos Knights in such a short period, which I don't know how he's done it. They look amazing. I look at my own, I'm like, how did you do that? And he's like, airbrush. And I'm like, that'll be why.
The greatest tool, but most annoying tool.
1 second, guys.
No worries. Carry on.
So with that being the case, it was originally meant to be 1,230-ish points aside, and myself and play. Gus the Hutt came along, was like, I've got no one to play with, I'd like to play. And then as we started setting up, Too Many Sprues was like, I've brought Space Marines! And it became a 2 versus 2 game, which spent 5 hours playing 2 turns.
So 1,500 points each.
For my opponents, yes. However, I only had as many points as I had, so Too Many Sprues had to make up the difference.
Okay.
So he brought Primera Space Marines, and he's got his famous quartered color scheme of green and orange. And he actually used a drop pod in the game, and it was useful because, as you can see in the image, there's no cover there.
No.
It's a Knights and Titans board. So you don't really need cover, you don't really need obscuring, and he's going there with Primaris going, oh god!
There's a couple like walls and stuff, like a bit of a bunker and buildings right at the back of the board.
Yeah, which is exactly where he needs them not to be, because his range isn't as high as mine.
Exactly.
But there's also bridges and things which were just tall enough for his Marines to technically walk underneath and come out the other side if he wanted to.
That's cool.
But there was almost no point because we were only playing primaries. We weren't playing secondaries. It was the first game of 9th edition. I played 2 now. Both of them have been at Warhammer World with my Knights. And I've won 2 for 2 so far.
Well played.
Again, we played no secondaries because I've not played them. Wish I knew how to play. Could have played my custodes with you. This is true. Gloincloth was actually at the table with us whilst this was going on. Learn, get your book out. Exactly.
We'll get a game in with you soon, Gloin, hopefully.
Fingers crossed. But I just hadn't used them. There's a whole honor system with Imperial Knights that you have to get used to. That I went, let's scrub that for now. Let's leave that to one side, because with the honor system, having read it a little bit more now, there's more to Imperial Knights in terms of net positives than there are net negatives. So by scrubbing that out, yes, I'm disadvantaging myself, but I'm also making it so the game is much more streamlined for people who are looking at me referring to a book every 2. So so with that, well, we had a lot of chaos, so many, and Hedgehog had mostly close combat ones. Gus the Hutt had mostly long range ones, and Acastus Porifor. I've always said that.
God.
Yeah. It's technically it's an Imperial Knight.
The Porphyrin's ridiculous.
Yeah. Say again.
It's ridiculous. It's really powerful in game as well.
It was less powerful than you'd think it was.
Yeah.
Because although the stats like back up the power of those weapons, the range was 72 inches, which you'd think is more than enough space on most boards. However, my Warlord had an 80-inch volcano lance.
Yeah.
So I was completely unaware that my plastic model would have higher range than a Forge World model, but that's how it happens to sit.
In Titanicus, the Porf in Titanicus when it first came out was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Because it's like a knight-sized thing, and they weren't very expensive points wise, but the weaponry did enough damage to kill Warlord Titans. And you're like, well, what's that about then?
As long as you can get them in range and concentrate your fire, you're going to get some decent work done. But I'm just so far away that he's only getting me with his longest range guns, and I had an invulnerable save. It was my Warlord of a 4-up, and his entire first turn of shooting my Warlord whiffed. Nothing happened. You had a lot of close combat Questorius Knights come in from the Chaos side, running across the board, and I was just like, right, okay, that's scary. I'm gonna, just fire at that, bang, and
if it hits, it slaps the volcano lance.
Well, there's that, but there's also the fact that I'm deliberately playing Housecrast and love the lore for Housecrast. And the thing with Housecrast specifically is they get bonuses versus vehicle, monster, and Titanic on their house relic. So I'm going against Chaos Knights. I've given that to the guy who's got the volcano lance, and he did in one salvo of his volcano lance after resolving all the rolls, 14 damage with just that weapon. So
okay.
the rest of the wounds got him down to 1 on that Questoris Knight, and too many spruces to the side going, got an intercessor squad there.
Yeah, just chipped it away.
We're just imagining this knight going do 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 do, and there's like, and then this one bolt comes like out of his leg and he falls over. That's what I'm imagining in my head.
Being a mass reactive rounds, they can do a little bit of damage if it's already shooting at. Maybe you shot into the hole that you'd made in its carapace.
Oh yeah, shooting Womp Rats on the Death Star, that kind of.
That's it.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just going to jump into the pictures of your armigers at the minute, and I think they're fantastic. I love the color scheme. I love the freehand snake. I love the two-tone yellow and red, the hazard stripes. It looks like you put a lot of love into these boys. The bases as well.
Sure. The thing about this is why I was talking about the game in the first place was because in this second image, like you can see that there's nameplates there that with plaques. They're from Versatile Terrain, which is a UK company. And then on the left, you can see that there's transfers on top of them.
Yeah.
And the melters have got much more paintwork done on them than the other two on the right. Essentially, the Armature Warglaives are the ones who've had the longest. And I needed to get these ready for the game. So I cut so many corners, and not owning an airbrush, you can tell the difference in quality between the two on the left and the two on the right. Housecrast doesn't actually have transfer sheets for their house. So I had to make those using my inkjet printer. So I had to buy specific transfer sheet paper and then paint little cream circles on the front, on the top of these armatures to put the transfer on top, because the yellow and white doesn't come through properly on an inkjet printer because it presumes the paper will be white. So So if you don't do that, then you have to paint over the top of it by hand. So even in the previous image where you see the knight running across the table, the Castellan knight, I had to freehand over the top of the transfer because the yellow just wasn't through. And in terms of getting everything done in a short enough period of time to be ready to face Hedgehog, the two on the right, I went, okay, I'll get the hazards done, I'll get everything glued together, and I will do the bare minimum that needs to be done so that I don't make things harder to paint for myself later. And the funny thing about the photo of these armigers is, like, if you can zoom in to the bottom one of the two images, in that splice you've got there, the armiger at the back, the Helverin at the back, you can see the side underneath the carapace. I have painted the individual wires on that thing.
Nice. We can't see it on the image, but you have to get us a nice close up at some point.
I can do that. That's no problems. I've got an Instagram link for that. No time at all.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd already last year done a lot of that detail work. So in essence, I had a 2-week rush to just get them finished to a standard that was at least battle worthy. And they look beyond battle worthy because of previous efforts, but I'm still not happy with them because they don't look as good on the right as they do on the left. But I will be getting them to that standard. Now I've got
together, like the whole.
Oh, for sure. But I've got another 3 Questoris and 4 Armigers now because of one, a gift to myself, and 2, a kind donation from stream. But here is the link
to the insides. Oh yeah,
we can see this, but you guys will have to tune in on Merlin's Instagram, which is MerlynModels, and he's done blues, reds.
Let's just put in chat.
You put the link in chat, but the picture. So I've got a screen cap of Discord at the minute.
Okay.
In chat. That one.
Yeah, the YouTube chat. I posted the link in there as well. So
yeah,
I've put it in there.
I like the heated metal that you've done as well. I've been playing around with a few bits myself on that, but not been going quite. Trying to keep it a bit more subtle on some of the stuff I've been doing. So I like
easier
this
than you
going to
think.
the burgundy.
It's really it's a lot easier than you think. It's just high effort in terms of weight.
Yeah.
A lot of people have suggested using contrast paints, but with these, I did Retributor armor followed by a series of gradiented colors of shade paints, and just let them dry. And because I was doing a lot of armor just at once, whether it be on the weapons themselves or the exhausts on the back, I just did them en masse, so that if I was waiting for them to dry, I'd be waiting for a lot of things to dry, and it saved my time in the.
Yeah, you got
So
through.
it got like an effect you want to achieve like that with shade paint. You can always do it.
Just got to keep layering
I like
it
adding
up.
a bit of bluey purple in there as well.
Yes,
Yeah,
I
just
bought
layers.
I bought a box of inks from Liquitex.
I love
You can
that
get
stuff.
them on Amazon. You can get them from art stores wherever, and I use them to make my own washes or pseudo contrast type things. I've got some matte medium and that, and you just sort of mix it up with a bit of deionized water or whatever. I think Geek Gaming Scenics has a few videos on YouTube about how to do it, and it's sort of pretty straightforward. And then because you're doing it yourself, you can change your consistency to whatever you want. But you can get like a primary colors pack, so you get your reds and your blues and your yellows, and then you get a few extra bits in there. Burnt umber is a particularly nice color to have handy, but it means then you can do that add the additional burn marks as such. The heated metal look is quite nice. I've got eradicators from that last big marine set that came out, so I need to paint them up and get them doing the same thing.
same
But
style.
that's kind of how I plan to do that. Kind of do the nozzle burn on the multi melters, sort of with that same kind of bluey brownness that you've got for the heat exhausts.
There is another thing
So-
on that actually I'm going to mention, which is if you use reference images for metal that has been like overheated and then left, so anything that is like part of industry, certain bits of the metal will just fleck off. So you've got the highest heated point that are most exposed are the thinnest edges. So right at the end, I've got dry brushing of Stormhost Silver, and the reason for that
Okay.
is because like you get that gradient of like heat all the way through, and then at the end, that's where like the gases are coming out, or for the weapons, again, the superheated materials coming out. The metal will degrade there, so you end up with it in the examples it coming off. So dry brushing that is just to add that suggestion.
Adds a nice pop as well.
Yeah, because it brings the eye to it, and also like points out the contrast.
Oh, for sure, man. Well, I love him, and you can use these in Horus Heresy as well, Merlin, which I'll come round to because we are going to try and organise a little bit of a Horus Heresy get together in the new year. So we haven't got a date set in yet, but I'll talk to you about that after. But
Loin's learning Horus Heresy there as well.
he is,
That's
because
true.
he's meant to be
Loincloth
coming
mentioned.
as well to that.
Oh right, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, he's meant to be coming along.
There's a massive oddity with Horus Heresy actually, because the only knights that I have for Adeptus Titanicus, which I've shown to Vulcan, they're actually House Crest, and this is one of my Imperial Knights. However, I didn't know what the color scheme for 30k was going to be until the Loyus Legio's book came out, and I looked at it, and they're blue and yellow. So, and the reason for that is actually quite lore valid. They were blue and yellow before in the Horus Heresy, and then when Horus on the route to Terra annihilated the planet of Crisis with virus bombs, it's still there. It's not like Cadia where it's entirely gone from a Blackstone Fortress implosion, but they had to rebuild. All the other loyalist houses that were on that planet were gone. It was just them left, and Mechanicus helped them rebuild. And with that being the case, they pledged themselves to Questoris Mechanicus and repainted their scheme. So I have 3 Questoris Knights for Adeptus Titanicus that are in red with hazard stripes.
So pledge themselves to
Big.
Mars, and that's very cool, man. Well, there you go. You've got a justifiable background. Well, with the interest of time, we're going to quickly whiz through Kitbash's latest stuff. He's self-confessed.
Well, that's all right. I can quickly bash through this.
Go on, Kitbash, take us away. We've got the
Okay, so
I don't even know what that is, an Ogrin thing.
the Wendigo that I'm building for my Age of Sigmar stuff, mentioned it last time. It's just more stuck together than it was before. I haven't got anywhere with doing the additional stuff. I've got the tail on, but I haven't done any of the fur in the tail. And I still can't quite figure out whether I want to put a hood or like straps around the rest of the head part at the top.
Right.
So, you know, open to suggestions with that sort of thing, but very much a work in progress, as it always is with anything I'm doing. The main thing that I've done recently, though, is the next picture, which is that squad of incursors. I think it's incursors, or it's the other one. The same unit, one of them. Yeah, it might be infiltrators. I can't remember. Incursors are the ones with knives, which is what I use them as, but they're infiltrators, I think. So I cracked the dry brush out finally after doing a bunch of tests, and Dryad Bark, Mournfang, and then Karak Stone, I think.
Karak Stone's a lovely paint.
Oh, Gothor Brown. Karak Stones is what I'm going to use for. Oh, hang on a minute.
Maybe it's
like
more of a highlight, isn't it?
It's Gothor, right? So it's Dryad Bark, Gothor Brown, and then Baneblade from the top. So very, very top Baneblade on it. Then I was going to go maybe with a bit more Baneblade or Karak Stone to do edge highlighting on them if I really feel like it. But I just want to get them tabletop ready.
Yeah.
Methaston, arm, faceplate, bronzes. What do you call it? Warplock bronze on all of the edges. But as you notice, the majority of them are not painted. I've only got one of them painted. So I put all the bits on, and I'm trying to take a high brightness, low contrast picture, but it hasn't quite worked properly, so I still need to work on that. But I'm sort of semi-lazy highlighting, so trying to do true metallic metal. So I'm leaving the dark areas as the dark metallic, the Warplock, and then putting Hashut on top, and then I've got Sycorax bronze that I'll be doing as the final highlight for them to try and to keep this the highest highlight at the top, so it's just top down light and doing it like that. Trying to reduce the amount of time that I'm taking to paint each individual one, but maintain some sort of decent consistency with it. So because I've done the zenithal with the browns, I can then use the reference in the brown colors to then put my highlights for the metallics and the reds in the right places. So that's where the airbrushing comes in really handy, because you whack it all over like that, you know. So the main bit dryad all the way around, and then sort of less of an angle, and then straight from the top. Vulkan knows how Tom knows how to do it, but it means I could bash out the full 10-man squad with the browns in. I mean, I think it took me about 20 minutes to do it, maybe a bit more, not including the swapping the paints and cleaning the airbrush bits. But so to say, like maybe an hour and a half to do all of them. It's my first time doing a full squad with the airbrush, so I'm not exactly quick at doing them and getting the consistencies right and things, but done. Reds on it, easy peasy. Whatever consistency my broken pot of sort of 30 million year old red paint is that I've got for doing the I've got scab red still in the little black lid pot, so that's got to be 15 years old. So I put thinner in it to get it working again, because it goes really gloopy. But it means when you paint it on,
I've got like 10 behind on top of this.
Well, if you've got them that so they're just like really thick,
school.
and if you put enough thinner in them, they end up actually becoming more like contrast, because the old paints had really high pigmentation in them. So the quality, I think, because like with the newer stuff, when you've got your base and you've got your layers and you got your which is just base and layers, isn't it? But like the old paints, all of them were base, and the base layer paints are really high pigmentation for coverage purposes, is the theory. I don't know whether they've changed the rules of how they make the paints, but that's how it seems anyway. So if you thin down a base layer paint on one of the old ones, it actually works more better as a glazing paint than it does like you'd expect it not to. Anyway, it keeps the kind of highlight on it already.
You were saying earlier about wanting to get projects done and not understanding how I was able to finish. I do one-offs, and that's the only way I can do it because I can't do that level of high detail, do entire squads. So I'm impressed we've got this many models.
Well,
So
far
yeah.
I have only done one of, like, the other picture I've got on there, which is my aggressor, which is the test piece I did. Did it the same way. It's just that I took a lot more time to figure out how I was going to do it.
Yeah.
But I think this goes to what I was saying earlier, the mindset type thing. I think with me, in my mind, what I like to do is figure out the quickest way to achieve the best result that I can or would like to achieve from what I'm doing. So I'll take one model, I will do a number of tests. I've got, as I showed last time, legs. Printed a load of legs off, painted them in various different ways, base coating different colors, started with blues to see what that was like. Browns over blues, that works quite well. It works more for leathers rather than it does for that, but you kind of get like nice shadows. Kind of prefer like a purpley color, but in the end I just went with dried bark because it just does it easier. It ultimately achieves sort of the same effect. Trying dry brushing, see what would work with that. The airbrush came out on top to do it, but I had 6 or 7 different pairs of legs that I did different ways of doing it. Settled on one of them, did the aggressor, did the full lot. Had a little mess around with using the airbrush to do sort of almost object source lighting for the vents on the backpack. Not sure if I like the bright blue of it, but it looks better in person. But it's an extra bit of faff that maybe if I go back to it, it's just a quick.
I think you should keep this in because
to blast it.
To me, it screams of like a Space Wolves sort of subterfuge, nighttime spec ops kind of armor, and then that little blue coming out from the vents, or even if you do some Inceptors or something like that, you can play on.
I mean, that's a good argument. Maybe I will then.
So
then the gist of it then is, now that I've got that in place, I've now got to go and do the trims on every single one.
Yeah.
Which seems like it's a minute job to do compared to doing the whole lot. But then my brain's gone, well, I've done one.
That'll do.
And it's like, right, no, you've got 9 more to do. No, I've done one. I've got 9 more to do, maybe another time. So it's going to take me ages, but it's going to take me infinitely less time. Not infinitely less time, a significant amount less time to do those 9 now than it would have taken me if I hadn't used the airbrush and done the zenithal highlights on everyone. So I've figured out a way of cutting out. Yeah. So I just now got to do that with
100.
The entire rest of the army.
Yeah.
I've got a Redemptor Dreadnought just here that needs painting.
Yeah, next
but
week,
it's a weird one. So like the giant here, I painted that for GriffCon. I had it printed off. I started painting it like 3 days before GriffCon and had it painted and highlighted and to a reasonable level for it, and it was there and it was done. And it's kind of like sometimes I can just go, bang, slap, smash, 3-day perfect model sorted. And then other times I'm like, you've got all the time in the world. Okay, then. I will take all the time in the world.
That's the
Frustrations
about deadlines. Like they're really helpful for motivation, but they're also really bad for mental health.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a strange balance. You got to set it so that you. Well, like I seem to get the most inspired when I book a game. As soon as I booked a game in with someone, I end up doing a little bit of my own stuff towards, even if it's just chipping away at night or whatever it is. Like the last game I had was a Marvel Crisis Protocol game. I knew I was going to do it, so I was like, all right, I'm going to put a bit of paint on Storm, and put a little bit more work on her. It was only an hour, but like I did a little bit more towards my project because of that game, and it sort of gave me that uplift.
Well, the game of Marvel Crisis Protocol, that the one where you were telling me how it works.
Yeah.
I painted more of my stuff in preparation for that, despite the fact that I didn't even use it because I didn't have the cards for it. But like I was like, I need to get them painted. So like I got a load painted. Same with when we did Turnip, when we did those Turnip videos.
The Turnip stuff.
I'd been sitting on it for ages, and then we're like, right, we're going to record the videos. I'm like, oh, cool, right, I need to get my army done. And then I I got it all done, and it was like in my head.
I was shocked.
After I'd finished it, I was like, "How have I done that?" Because like I could have done that at any point, because I've had these for ages. Never even done them. And I think that's what worked when I was younger, because every Thursday I went to the Games Workshop to play a game. So if I bought a new unit, I needed it painted for the following Thursday, or I wouldn't be able to play it. But that's okay, because I could have sat down and painted it there. But either way, I was either painting or I was playing. It was like a requirement, because they wouldn't let you play with grey miniatures unless you just bought it there and then in the store, and then they'd let you off with it, because it was like, well, you've just bought it, we can't fully expect that to happen. But there was that kind of commitment to requirement of painted, whereas like doing it in my own time. I mean, I love painting them, I love collecting them, I love building them. There's no hate the whole process I love doing. I'm not one of them people who is like, I love painting it, but I hate building, or I love playing, but I hate building and I hate painting, or like it's sort
I
of.
want it to take less time, but be just as fun.
Yeah,
Like,
that is it. Like I love every single aspect of the hobby.
like I can step in.
But it's a lot of time. And then Tom's played games with Vulcan's played games with me. It's not a 5-minute game, is it? You were complaining about the 3,000 point thing taking 5 hours for 2 rounds.
Take Kitbash
Do that with a
you
500 point game.
Big game like that. You know you have to keep
Speed
it down
hammer.
to 500 points. I invented a system called Speed Hammer back in the day at the old club, which we used to do 3 games in an evening, Merlin. 3 hours, 1 hour games. It was intense.
And that was ideal for me.
I don't mind like the games taking that long. Like for me, like you're having fun with them, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's not a tournament, in which case you've got to shit on a little bit. But
that's why Titanicus is good.
Exactly, but there's also like other skirmish games. So any Games Workshop product or other product that you get that has a low model count for a long game, I love. Like Blood Bowl, I got into that and I bought 1 box of dwarves and that was it. I had all the models I need, painted all 12 of them, and then I was like, right, I now have that team. That is my Blood Bowl team. If I want to play, I can play.
Yep.
With Adeptus Titanicus, it's not quite as simple as Blood Bowl players, where you can put them together and your painting angles are quite nice. The Adeptus Titanicus ones are just as complicated as their full scale ones, so the painting angles can be quite awkward. And if you want to do those weapon swaps, you've got to do the magnetization. So if you're doing that level of intricacy, there's a lot of like willpower to go, right, I've got to go and build these, I've got to do that. So I try to get everything else off my plate and finish things so that I've got less I have to think, because not everyone just ignore the 30 models on there.
Yeah. I know what you mean about the skirmish game things. Someone from the gaming store back in the day, it was Pete. Pete gifted me his Iron Golems for Warcry, because he'd bought Warcry, the board game, the full box set even, and I was watching and I played a few games and like, oh, this is pretty good. He's like, oh, you can have them if you want. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what? Just borrow them? Do you want them back? He's like, no, because I have no intention of playing Iron Golems at all at any point, and they'll just end up in a box in a room and they will never get touched ever again. So if you're going to build them and paint them, so I'm like, okay then. So I built them. I had a quick look at what the best stats were and what the recommended builds were, put the right weapons on, painted them in sort of like a cornate effect, but like covered in blood and gore and all this sort of thing. I went bang, and it was like, wow, I've got like a full thing done. Same with Kill Team with my squats. I built and painted all of them, like my Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs, and I was like, oh, I've done them. It's done. It's like the skirmish thing. I can compute skirmish. It's like, it's 8 guys, done. 8 guys, sorted. It's a little. That's why the 500 point speed hammer thing works, because it's like 2 squads of tactical marines and a tank or something like that, and I can do that. I can get that done. That's not a problem. But
full army.
You need 2K. I'm like, oh, man, that's like 400-500.
It's intimidating, but like there is like a caveat I'll put in with the skirmish thing, because like with Kill Team 1.0, and when I say 1.0, I mean like the previous version, not the one beforehand from Yonks and Yonks. Kill Team 1.0, you would have, here's your list. You've got these many guys, go, and each one of them would have the weapon they have, and that's fine because, to be honest, if you're using those models, you're going to be using them in 40k lists as well. They can keep those guns, not going to need to magnetize. Kill Team 2.0, I know nothing about it, but if we bring it to, say, Necromunda, again, skirmish-based game, definitely about that. As a campaign goes on, models gain value, experience, all these other things. You can use money in that game, like in-game money, not real money on the game. To literally swap their equipment now. So I'm stuck with a load of Orlocks that are just I've painted the first guy. I did a great job with it. I was really enjoying it, and then I went, I should really read the rules before I put the weapon arms on, just in case. And yeah, you can upgrade them, and each one of the arms is a tetrahedron lock into the shoulder, so that the arms don't drop, which is great. But if you want to magnetize that, the arms will droop. So I haven't figured out how I want to do that yet. So some skirmish games are brilliant because you can just throw them out, and then other ones I'm like, that's gonna stay until I can think about it, because there's only a certain amount of like.
So that's one of the reasons I stopped with Necromunda is for that. Now, I've played a Necromunda game way back when, but we used to not do it as WYSIWYG. You know, what you see is what you get. We used to just play with what we got, and it had the stat sheet because we didn't have a lot. You know, this was like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But like the new Necromunda are fabulous, love the miniatures, but again, that chop and change is tough unless you can get the right
problem with
magnets,
Necromunda back then.
Stuff.
It's a bigger problem for people like myself. Don't want to talk for others. Who want to paint the model to the highest possible standard they can. So when it's on the board, it's immersive. So I've painted this face to look really good, and that character is now that character and none of the others. And then the solution my friends gave me to the magnetization problem was buy more Orlocks. And I'm not painting the same face 5 times for a different equipment.
That's 20 hours per model.
No thanks. If it's 10 guys, 10 hours each, yeah, okay, I can kind of do that and go, it's done. I never have to do it again. I'm not painting 100 guys to do 10 different loadouts for each one.
I've mentioned this a few times in the past. I used to play More Time.
I never got to
when it was out.
I've heard good things
back in the old days.
Be careful, Christian.
But I had.
Time.
Can you?
I'll keep this concise. It's basically Necromunda, but fantasy, right? And there's rats, loads of rats. So it's Vermintide, Necromunda. That's how it worked. But the same thing. You start off with a warband, and as you progress through the campaign, you get XP. You unlock new. You can buy new weapons. You unlock feats. Some guy almost dies, loses a leg, and you're like, well, hang on a minute. What am I going to do here? Now, me back then, because I have vampire counts, I created it was actually relatively straightforward, because it's kind of like the zombies and skeletons and undead ones don't earn XP, so you don't have to worry about them. They can't equip gear, so they're always going to be the same. Only like your ghouls and henchmen and the vampire himself gain anything. But because it's a vampire, they already have access to all the high-end gear. So we already had heavy armor, we already had the shield, we already had the sword and all his vampire powers. And they're where most of your stuff go. And the things they gain are like more strength, the ability to eat people, etc., etc. But the henchmen are like
the model that's the lightest.
But the henchmen were like, he upgraded from a pitchfork to a sling or whatever. But because the henchmen were based off of the Imperial Guard sprue, where you've got like 20 guard, not the Imperial Guard, sorry, the Empire footmen. You had like 20 guys on the sprue, and they got like as many weapons as the eye can see. It was like, okay then, snip, blue, repaint black. There you go. It was the impulsive nature of me as a child. I could just go chop, chop, chop. Chop, 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 glue, 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 chop, chop, chop. And now, as an adult, I'm like exactly the same as you were saying. You've just put loads of effort into painting that. And you're, he's got a different gun. Well, I'm never playing that game over again. I'm not chopping up these miniatures. I'll chop them up at the start, but not at the end.
If you played that game now, those henchmen, they'd have flat joints, right? It would be glue, glue. Flat,
yes,
flat.
Yeah, they were, yeah.
That would be fairly straightforward to magnetize, whereas the next ones are tetrahedron joints, and they are a nightmare. Because you'd have to drill both of them the same shape. Hope you've got it okay so that they'll hold it. Like, get stronger maggots for them.
Yeah, I think
unless
they've done that intentionally so that you would have to buy multiples,
Mhm.
which is a crafty thing. But there are ways around them. You know, you could
Blue
chop
tack.
that tetrahedral bit off. You could pin it. You know, but we're going down a rabbit hole with it. But there are ways around it potentially.
There are for sure, but in terms of like how much effort it is to go ahead and do it, you have to be in the right mindset to go. Right, I'm gonna do this today, and sometimes you just want to paint.
Yeah, and you end
Yeah.
up painting like 5 different weapon variants for one bloke, which great.
Which
You
is
know, if you're
fine.
very invested in the character,
It makes sense. Makes sense for a dreadnought because it's like there's
Yeah.
relative easy. It's a big thing you're working with, and it's not got that much movement in the arms and things. But when you're painting gang members who have an option of, like you said, 5 or 6 different weapons each,
Loads of
which any
options.
of them could have at any one moment, and some might have multiples, you're then painting 5 or 10 weapon options for each individual person in the gang. And how many people have you got in the gang in Necromunda? Like 8 or so?
10 sometimes.
10. So you're like, it's like 10 guys, 50 weapon options that you're making.
Yeah,
And you're like, oh, it's like you've done an army of weapon options.
You have to have one of those like separator toolkits that has them all in separate containers, so that when you go to an event, you're like, right, okay, all of that's in its own baggies, so it
Yeah.
doesn't get damaged and chip the paint off that you spent so long doing. Like,
If-
well, like talking about dreadnoughts for a second, I've got 2 dreadnoughts on my desk that are both metal dreadnoughts.
Yeah.
And if you really don't like how the game is going, it's not very family friendly, but they are called rocks in socks for reasons. Like, like you can be like, you know what, I am unhappy. Smash.
The
Don't do
OG
that. That's a bad
resin.
plan.
Oh,
Metal dreadnought.
Well,
I've dropped one of those on my foot before.
Oh, me too. It
Yeah.
hurts.
They're chunky boys indeed.
standing on it.
Trying to convert one, that's a bit of a nightmare as well.
It's
Little
incredibly
hacksaw out.
intimidating. Just like carrying this from one side of the desk to the other, because I'm like, along this desk is a lot of resin and plastic. I could drop it on, and it's just
Yep.
like, no.
It will crush.
Goodbye, cruel
But-
world.
Just to move us on, I'll just quickly showcase you what I've been working on as well.
Some salamanders. Lovely
We've been doing salamanders, yeah, for a long time now. For about 2.5 months, pretty much. It's just been non-stop salamanders. I've been burnt out. There's been a few bits that have gone on in between, but I've got a few finishing touches to do, which is stuff like, just going around the rims with a bit of black, just double, triple check, because I always go through and double, triple check an army, make sure everything's all right. But I'll quickly whiz you through some photos. So, working down, we've got, see what I mean with the base, so I need to just quickly whiz.
These are heresy as well, aren't they? Yeah.
These are all heresy, yeah. So this is a big commission I've been working on, and it's an amalgam of pieces. So this is a veteran squad, the one that's on screen at the minute, and
I didn't know it was a commission.
Yeah, this one's a commission, and I do own my own Salamanders army, but I'm not going to be painting that anytime soon, Merlin. I definitely do. Like, I love painting Salamanders, but I need to work on something else. But I have thoroughly enjoyed this. I've just clicked off it, just 2 seconds.
On the subject of burnout, like, I get it, and I've just finished 1,235 points of Imperial Knights. I've got more Imperial Knights. I want to build them, but I'm really not in the mood to paint them, so I get it. But what you can do is build them, prime them, get to a reasonable stage, field them in a game, and go, whichever one did well of the unpainted ones, that one will get the paint job next because it made me happy.
Exactly. That's what I plan to. But
you can get back into your salamanders, and it'll be okay.
It will one day. I will definitely get a game because all my stuff's built, so it's built and primed. But I need to redo it. But I'm going to do a demon's army. But and I think I'll apply a lot of the stuff I've learned from painting these because this was a bronze tier commission with a silver tier Vulkan. So these are all tabletop, like a neat tabletop with some weathering and stuff like this going on. With the veterans, I've got all the really fancy Forge World transfers. So for example, all the veterans got the gold skull. I think got a sideways image there, so it's got the golden skulls. Bought myself some Microsoft Microset as well to really that is the best transfer product that you can get. It's very, very good. You need to apply multiple layers, and then when you stick a matte varnish over the top, it basically looks like it's been painted on, which is pretty damn good. You don't get that with like Vallejo glaze decal medium. But all of these bits were custom bits so I had like a massive bits box basically. Some of it was pre-built, some of it wasn't built, and like for example, like this support squad, which is just beneath the veterans, you can see they've got all sorts of random gear.
I really like these flamers.
Yeah, man.
Like the one with the dragon head on the end of it. It's very nice.
Well, they get like a special flamer, so it's called, lo and behold, it's called the Dragon Flamer, and it's like a slightly higher version. So you've got a normal flamer at the back left, and then all of these are different, unique, similar style. He didn't have many tack marines, so like the one beneath that's tacks. I think I want to get a better picture of that because the plasma looks great on the photo, but I don't remember it looking like. I'd like to see a sideways picture, so I should probably go back and take a sideways picture with that.
Oh, sure. Can we talk about the basing, because that's across all these?
Oh yeah.
So clearly it's like a cork board, and you've got like a nice bit of OSL between them, and that's really well done. But where do you get corkboard from? Because like only place I've got it is like random friends giving me wine bottle cork. I don't drink wine, and I'm just
IKEA,
like,
mate.
Really, IKEA?
Literally,
I
IKEA.
get it. I get these from Amazon.
They're quite expensive though, aren't they?
No, not at all. Pack of 6 for like a £5 or something.
I'll have to get some of them.
It's a lot thinner. If you can see there, that's a nice focus.
That's
on that.
better for certain.
It's a big roll of it, and you just stack it up. Oh,
yeah, you build
there's a little thing.
The reasoning is because like it always comes out in like a really nice shape for suggesting an industrialized world that's had things go wrong. Cork sheet.
Back to the front.
Just called a cork sheet.
SPD UK cork sheet, high quality cork. This is 1 meter, 2mm thick, 30 centimeters wide.
So I've seen some really easy, great effects on basing that, so that people suggest that this is a world that has been a certain way, and then something else happened, or as you've done with the lava bases, whether it's tarmac or literal tar that is then cooled down. It's a nice effect, and I'm not going to say I'm tired of using Citadel basing materials, but there is a lack of like vertical gradient with like standard texture paint.
Yeah.
And you have to use Milliput, and it's quite expensive to use Milliput to do that kind of thing, where you can use cork to get more from it, and I just can't find that kind of thing. There you go.
Just stack it up like that.
Yeah.
And it gets a good effect. I mean, I do that, and then I'll get texture paint, or I'll get primer mixed with sand and just splat it all over the top of it and around it, just to fill in the little gaps and things.
Like the big chunks of cork that you see, for example, the support squad's got quite big chunks of cork. That is from IKEA, and that's like the heat pads. So if anybody's familiar with like the IKEA heat pads, they're £3, and you get like a stack of 3 of them, and they're quite chunky. And then so it was like, but on these it was green stuff to get the lava effect, and then like getting your either wedging in a good bit of cork like that. I did have a few small thin sheets of cork that I used on some of them, and then used a bit of a grit mix on a few others. So it's a bit of a mix. I'll see if I can. So I wanted it to be sort of, obviously it's Nocturne. It's Nocturne when everything's been kicking off. Like there's a big fight that happens on Nocturne with the Death Guard and the Salamanders, which is a nice like theme. But anything can happen, and it's usually when the planets become upset and all of the lava crust starts kicking off. So they've got stuff to walk on, but there is lava flow.
Decides to leave the battlefield.
Yeah. So
it's kicking off.
It is a flipping death world at the end of the day, like
I would love to see that battle though, like Death Guard versus Salamanders on Nocturne.
On
Just like
Nocturne.
these Death Guard very slowly marching their way across the battlefield, and the Salamanders are just like, let's just destroy the floor in certain bits and watch their army sink in and
Pretty
die.
much. Yeah.
It's just-
Like as if the spirit of the planet's awoken, and these are quite cool as well. That these are the pyroclasts, so just underneath the tac squad. So these are a elite unit, which you can only get the miniatures from Forge World currently. So you could see that some of the parts for these, like the legs and the bodies and a few other bits, some of the heads were used in the vet squad. I think it's just what the guy had, but these were full pyroclasts. They are now amazing in Horus Heresy, so I've done 20 of them. Which, as you can tell, is a lot of trim and drove me to the brink of tears.
just so much filigree.
There's so much
I
trim.
know that pain. I spent a solid month just painting Gilliman. So
He is all trim.
I did it in sub-assembly. I couldn't do it any other way. I would have gone mad.
So, well, that's Mark III Marines particularly have that mark. When you see that shoulder pad with the thicker, like riveted outline, that's Mark III. So Mark IV and onwards, they tend to have smaller, like, padding. So, like, more traditional to like what you paint with your Space Marine. They've got a thinner bit to put filigree on, which in a way is easier and more, but it's thin, so you can make mistakes.
That's the weird thing that I found, that if you scroll back up to my Ultramarine you're on, because of the age of the model, it's got more filigree than you'd expect. So
Yeah,
you look at it on the legs, especially like the top end of the legs, you'd go, oh yeah, there's not much filigree there. The bottom end, it just reminds us of how similar the Space Marines and the Chaos Space Marines are.
Oh yeah, yeah. That symbology. It wasn't just because they changed it into more arrows, didn't they? And like more pointed stars. And especially if you look at your Titanicus stuff and your Heresy stuff, they do have more of those like fleur de lis symbols, or which is quite
AdMech
cool.
have a lot as well. It's a very ingrained theme in all of the AdMech machinery. Specifically, you have that trim with the little pointy arrows on there, and you have all of that all the way along, and it's kind of like, if you painted it in a certain way, that would definitely look very chaotic, and you can see where because AdMech stuff's old technology that still works, isn't it? And you can definitely see where Chaos has gone, because they're not they didn't develop new technology. They corrupted old technology, which is then why it looks like it does. Whereas the stuff that the Marines have now are more modern versions of the stuff that's actually from a different time, which is.
I agree. I think it's fair to say that though that they diverged, because like Chaos, especially the Dark Mechanic, developed things that are completely different. But when it comes to the Space Marines, they've all got that old style armor, because why change it? They haven't got the same ability to have.
For sure, and it then turns Perturabo when you go down that end, when it starts infusing things with demon engines and inventing random stuff. Well, back onto Salamanders, I wanted to point you guys at the Spartan because I've been having fun with pigments on this one. So I've been using some pigments on the models, and I've been using 2 items that I'd suggest anybody get. And the first is pigment powder's great. Use them on your bases, but you use them on your miniatures as well. And AK Interactive's weathering pencils, which I did showcase a while ago on stream, but they're just so good for chipping and making things easier for yourself. If I keep going through the couple of the images, there's a couple of occasions where I didn't want to go to town. The guy said he didn't want it to be heavily weathered. He just wanted it to look like it's in battle. So there's going to be a couple of little scratches here and there. Like there's going to be mucky if that Spartan's driving over that ash, all that lava. It's going to have a lot of black in there. But that stuff gets everywhere.
There's one thing I like there that you've done that a lot of people forget to do. A lot of people, what they will do, they will do their entire model and then they'll do all the weathering, and then they'll go, right, now to put the transfers on. That's the wrong order, because if you put the transfers on after the weathering, it's entirely incongruent to the rest of the model. You end up with this really tidy transfer and a really messy model. So if you don't do the weathering afterwards, it's going to look very weird. But at the same time, you want to keep getting your gradient up and up and up. So you have to make that decision of, have I done the clean edge highlighting, or is this weathering? If it is the weathering step, that transfer is going to have a bad time.
Yeah. I mean, some of the transfers did take a bit more powder. I didn't, like I say, I wanted to keep the powder more localized around the tracks and to the sides, where it would naturally sort of powder as he's crushing this hot earth. So I had a bit of a theme in mind, but I've using some of the AK pen. There's not a picture here of that, sadly, but you can do a little bit of streaking with it as well, without having to faff about with enamels and things. You literally just put the AK interactive pencil on, get a little bit of water, and just pull it down. And
I've done nothing with enamels or oils. I'm still enjoying acrylic.
Oh, acrylics are great, man. I rarely use them because there's so much faff.
This might be an unpopular opinion. I don't like the Forge World transfers for Heresy.
You don't like those pretty salamanders transfers?
I don't like any of them. They look too photorealistic for the miniatures.
Oh,
they're too good.
Oh, so you're saying that they look out of step with the quality of paint job that you normally do?
Like for even the quality of paint job that they advertise them with.
That's
it's
true.
like you go bang, here's a miniature, okay, and here's this ultra photorealistic HD fantastic quality picture of a goose head that's infinitesimal small, and what you're gonna I've got it on this pink miniature, and you're like
the focus isn't great.
Unless you're painting photorealistic miniatures, then maybe like the normal transfers are it's a blue hoop.
Some normal transfers
it's a white letter U, and you're like, right, okay, that goes. And it's like, this isn't like a slight on you for the quality of what you've done. It's all fantastic. I just don't like the disparity between the projected quality of what they expect you to be painting based on the HD images that they give you to stick on the side of stuff and what you can actually realistically paint.
Also,
no one can paint it that well.
I don't think that even they would have had that. They would have had something that's simple and quick to produce. Otherwise, you're making it unnecessarily ornate. You want to make it prettier, sure, but it seems a bit.
I mean, back in the Heresy, things were a bit different. Things were done a bit differently back then. There was a lot of splendor, a lot of showcasing, armies on parade.
The fire on the shoulders of those the pyroclasts, the guys with the double flamers, the handheld one. Those ones look fine. They look brilliant because they're that kind of it's a small icon and you've got this flame. That makes sense. That's fine. It's the salamanders dragon head with the hammer and the flames on the side of
that's on the transfer sheet.
That's a bit much for me.
I'm not sure about all of the other Forge World ones, but the Salamanders one particularly, they had a couple of really big ones. That is a massive transfer. And I tell you what, it's a pain in the ass.
Small, is it, Spartan?
Yeah, and it because it has so much. Because when you're doing your transfer, you're trying to remove as much of the filler of the transfer as you can with your knife. Otherwise, when you putting your microset on, you're gonna have to do more layers over that bit. It just takes forever.
I think you've done a great job with it, considering that it's meant to be a lower quality level for what they're paying you, and it looks really nice.
I have done a bit more than I said I'd do because it's taken longer. So I've said to him, look, I'll put in a bit extra for you. And he's a mate, so it's one of them.
I will say for Forge World, what I do like is the embossed doors that you can get for the tanks.
Oh, yes, those are nice.
I've got some Space Wolf ones, and I can't remember why I've got Space Wolf ones. I think they may have been in the free-to-take box of bits at Goblin, and it was like, oh, I'll have them, and I dropped some stuff in and took them, but I'm never going to use them because mine are bears, not... Well, anyway, the point is, they're cool.
It's got a point.
Because that would work, because then you're gonna paint it, and it's going to be the same
quality
aesthetic as
level.
what you've already
Yeah.
painted with it, and that works. I think maybe they just sort of like someone's clearly went to art school and thought, yeah, this would be cool, and then did that, and it's like it's a really nice looking thing. Maybe it'd work on a banner, perhaps, or something like that. I don't know, because it's more Heresy's got more banners, haven't they? Yeah,
I think
so
it's the freehand aspect of it, because people on your Spartan, people want like a big freehand banner, because these were
yeah,
like the
that's true.
chariots of, they're leading the elite into battle. They'd have a banner of a sort, wouldn't they?
Like bringing it to transfers and freehand time, I posted an image at the bottom, which is
That's true, blind.
so the Horus Heresy
Ooh.
event that I went to, which was the release event, they allowed you to on the day build a model and paint it, and you get to take it away. It was a Mark 6 Marine. However, like I was cosplaying at that, so I asked at the end, "Do you have any left?" And they gave me one, and I managed to paint this one up before they released their color scheme. But I didn't have any of their transfers, so I had to freehand that shoulder pad and that shin pad that you can see there, and it was a nightmare to get done.
It looks fab, mate. I
so
want to see
in
a more on. Have you got a picture where it's showing the Raven?
Yep, yeah, I can
flush?
try and get that.
But this
Love
is
the
bang
backpacks
on,
on
mate.
those ones.
Yeah, I'm not
Those
sure on the.
backpacks
I
are
don't
great.
like the helmets of the latest version, and I'm not too sure on the feet, but I do like them. I don't know, but like they've brought out new helmet options now. So I've just seen the Salamander's helmet option, and I'm like, all my
I
stuff's
keep
Mark
saying I'm not
3.
going to collect Heresy. I keep saying I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. But then every time I see that smile, I'm like, I want a flawless host. I just want the flawless host. I want them golden, purple, beautiful boys.
Well, you've got to chip stuff as well. So as the Heresy gets into it, everything's got to be really weathered, because like when things kicked off, there wasn't really the same upkeep of the materials and the equipment. So in fact, like the Drop Site Massacre, some of the factions that survived.
There you go.
Let's pull that up. So like the Raven Guard, for example, they would have had bits and pieces of different armor from whatever they could scavenge.
Yeah, that's basically what Mark 5 was, wasn't it?
Yeah. And then this new Mark here, I'm not really sure how they planned it into the storyline yet, but
those little bubbles.
This was in development. The Adeptus Mechanicus were developing it, and they gave it to 2 legions: the Iron Warriors and the Raven Guard.
Right.
The Raven Guard absolutely loved it, gave suggestions of how to improve it, and the Iron Warriors hated it and were like, "We'll take what you've given, but we don't want any more. This is not how we fight."
Right.
And the Alpha Legion then loved it, but the Raven Guard, because they got to test it, they had more of it than other people did. But most factions had it by the time the Heresy kicked off, it was already available. So there wasn't a huge amount of it, but it depended on like which legion actually preferred it. The Alpha Legion loved it.
Yeah, I like. Was it Maximus armor? Is quite good.
Yeah,
but I think is that.
I
can't remember which version Maximus is, but what I like about them is you've got the studs on the shoulders, and from reading the stuff that I read, the studs are in place battlefield bolt-on things so that shoulder pad doesn't actually fit that armor, but the studs are used to bolt it on. You get it on shin pads as well, and it's a replacement piece that's been. It's not actually fitted in, and they were using.
I thought
that was with some stuff.
Studs. I thought they were anti-explosive studs, because the reason for
really?
it, the reason why it's on the for him, it's the left shoulder.
Yeah, because that would be the one walking forward.
More armored on the side that's facing the end.
I think you're both.
So then there must be.
I think it was covered in one of the books. I think it's that they are like studs that they apply as an adornment for campaigns 1. So each of the studs that goes on.
There's the ones that get in the head that are for that.
They do stud their
There's little metal dots that they had in the heads for the campaign.
I'm not too sure
because I read it in a book.
Okay, so
I might have to dig it out because it'll be in my 3rd edition codex probably.
I don't want to say you're wrong, because you might not be wrong, but but the weird thing about it is if it's hit, every single one of those Space Marines has won the same amount of campaigns from the get-go because they've all got the same number.
Yeah.
So it's a little weird.
It's a strange one.
Yeah.
Well,
It's cool though. I like the idea of them being
Valinor.
ablative though, like because obviously in modern warfare stuff we have a lot of that, don't we? We have that ablative armor. It's designed to explode outwardly to negate the impact of something coming in. So it makes sense, especially on these guys because they're like 12-foot tanks and armor basically.
I want to see Gloincloth do Iron Warriors Mark 6 because they did have them. They just didn't like them. They were like, we'll keep it, but we got to use those Mark 3s because
you just got to make them.
They look good in Mark 3.
A little bit disappointed wearing the armor. It's like,
all their assault marines are just the beakies, and that's it. That's all they'll take.
Well, I have actually painted an Iron Warrior recently, guys, and I'll
Feet.
quickly point us to it because it's on my main boy. And
see, I'm if I collect heresy, it's a toss up between Fulgrim or what's the Custodes guy called?
Constantine Valdor.
Constantine Valdor.
Valdor, yeah. And I've been when I was been playing the card game that Tom made us get, Vulcan made us get. What's that called?
The Horus Heresy Legions game we were playing.
Yeah, and the first one I got Valdor, and it's like, oh, go on then. So I've been playing Custodes in that, and it's kind of making me want them, but I want Emperor's Children as well because of Ancient Rylanor. If you've read the entries about him, basically he was a Contemptor Dreadnought.
He deserves better than all of us.
Yeah, he's the best, wasn't he?
Yeah, definitely, he was the best. He got trapped underneath Istvan after it got virus bombed, hijacked another virus bomb, set off a beacon to call in Fulgrim. Some Thousand Suns turned up and we're like, what the fuck's this guy doing? And then Fulgrim turns up, and then Rylanor says, it basically says to him, I'm not going to follow you. I deny you. And then sets the virus bomb off again. Wow, it's like, fuck it. It didn't work. But it made Fulgrim more than a little bit angry that one of his own denied him. And that was worth it to wait however long he waited to try and blow him up again. Which is enough to make me kind of go, I kind of want to do loyalist Emperor's Children.
You can do it. There's even loyalist Iron Warriors. If you look through the books, you are able to run separate loyalist and traitor ones if they existed. One last thing about that scene with Rylanor was so good is the fact that like the beacon was detected by Magnus initially, and the Thousand Suns are there. They slow down the explosion of that virus bomb, and it's not just Rylanor going, I deny you. It's also the Thousand Suns going, you know what? I may be traitor, but screw you. That guy's right. Yep. And like even the traitors go, no, this loyalist is right. Fulgrim, you can off.
Yeah.
And just
I don't know if Thousand Suns were traitors at that point.
Oh no, they were. This was 40K.
They were.
Oh, it's 40K. Okay.
He'd been there for that long. Yeah. So when Fulgrim turned up, he's already ascended, and the Thousand Suns were the dusting suits guys, and it's such a great little sort of snippet of story that kind of like you would forget about it because it's not like he's a character in game that you can play. He's not part of anything other than this little tiny bit of lore, and it's just one of those things that like falling through the 40K fandom wiki and sort of go, oh, this is interesting. Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, it's a wormhole.
What's this? And it's such a great little story. I kind of want to like. It's one of those ones that I want to recreate as like a diorama at some point.
Oh, for sure.
Because it'd just be such an interesting thing to sort of this dreadnought with a bunch of cables jammed into it, and there's sort of like, what do you got there? A milkshake or whatever the meme is where the guy's got the ostrich.
Where's the giant ostrich?
Yeah.
The thing is,
with virus bomb written on it.
Terra, right? Because the ones that were from Terra were the ones that were before Fulgrim was found, and Rylanor is the ancient of rights. He will be from beforehand. People respected him, even if they were the new Space Marine.
Yeah.
But he was from Terra, so you can fluff it up that way.
Yeah.
But back to Vulkan, because we've got Vulkan
back for Vulkan.
He's been tempting it back and forth.
I've been just looking at him. I think I might retake these pictures because I've just sort of discovered how to use my DSLR camera properly through a couple of YouTube videos. But yeah, the picture there with we actually have an Impressed Children and an Iron Warriors there. But I think I might try and get a better picture, so because it's not really showing things properly. So I'll retake these, but that's fine. But we did. I've had some inspiration from Liam Paints. I think it was yourself, Merlin, or Masha. I can't remember who we were in chat talking about it. But either way, I got onto his channel. I was like, oh, I really like how he's done his hammer. And like the difficult thing because this was done to silver tier, so you're bringing more highlighting in, you're having a smoother blend on the armor panels, you're doing more effects, you're bringing everything up, but it's so hard to stop there, especially with this piece, because it's, Vulkan's my favorite Primarch. It was,
let's make it. He was saying the same. Someone like commissioned her to do Primarch, and she was like, I am not doing anything less than gold tier on this because it would be insulting to my own head.
Yeah.
Like, I wouldn't be able to paint it. So, like, fair play to you to be able to go, nope, I'm stopping here, because that's not easy when you love a model.
It is, and like some bits you going a bit above and beyond on. You like, and I often find when I was streaming while I was painting, it was Masha or somebody like, Tom, stop it. Like if you're going down the rabbit hole, particularly on a model, you wouldn't stop. But I have a good little picture close up of the molten, because that's like, I've done the molten metal effect a few times, and I think I'm more happier with that than any of the others previously, because
it looks really good.
Because like I just did a little bit more glazes instead, but if you were to take it up to that next level, you're going to put more glazes down, you're going to smooth out things more, you'll put more heat spots in, you'll put more, so you can see where you'll go with it, right? But it's an interesting one you should try and task yourself with that sometimes. And I think if you're going to set, like you've done with your Space Wolves, Kitbash, you've gone like, I want to get these quick and dirty, right? I'm going to stick to that. I don't know if you've done that yourself recently, Merlin, where you've gone, right, I'm only going to do it to this level. But it's wrapping it up together, because you've got to make sure it looks complete without going that extra mile.
I'm not done exactly that. And the reason that I'm not done exactly, because I do want to carry my model further. So with the Imperial Knights that I showed you earlier, I very much got them to a point where I was like, this is reasonable enough for the tabletop, but I haven't like cut myself off from improving it later. I've got to the top standard, the bits that are hard to read, and then like an okay standard, the stuff that people can just see and I can access later and have time with. But it's not a complete picture, so I'm impressed with what you've done, given that you've restricted yourself in all areas, and you've got to make those choices to go, how far am I going to push this? Like on that hammer, I might go so far as to say, right, I'm going to take like a really bright color and lightly stipple, just to suggest that the hottest point of the hammer is actually molten itself.
Yeah.
But at that point, you're pushing beyond what you've been asked to do.
That's it, and then you're going over your pound per hour as it works out. And often enough, it's tight to the wire anyway, because you've got to, when you generate a quote, you've got to sort of guesstimate based off previous experience. I've painted a lot of Space Marines in my time, so I can sort of gather how many Space Marines it's going to, how much it's going to cost to do a certain tier. But even then, like when you come up to them Pyroclasts, because they've got so much flipping trim on them, these have only been billed as like an elite version of a Space Marine, but they're taking so long, and you end up making more mistakes because you're rushing, and it drove me a bit mad, I'll be honest. Well, yeah, I thought I'd share that one with you because I'm going to retake a few pictures anyway. Like I say, I think it'd be better to move my lighting angle. So I'm trying to learn about the photography stuff.
With this photography, could you explain like what you've done? The light box, what's the light directions you've used? Because
okay, so
when it comes to lighting, there's a lot of things, especially when people do zenithal highlights. it's hard to know what is light and what is. So it's important to know what your setup was when you took the photo to know if there's ways you can do it better, or if you've already done it that way and that's how the thing's lit.
So what I did, I bought like a slightly bigger light box, and I've just pulled up this picture of the Contemptor because I think it shows that what I've done. So normally it had like an LED array in there, and I usually had like a little cheap, like circle light that I would put from the front. So like I watched the Miniac, I watched the Squidmart, I watched a couple of different people who've done like how to take good photos, and none of them were really telling me about ISO and white balance properly. So I ended up going to a proper photography thing for a bit, getting bored because it was going too much into the detail. I was like, right, this is too much for me. And then I found, I think it was Trovarian Miniatures, Troveron or Trovarian Miniatures.
Yeah,
Travarian.
Yeah. His tutorial on how to take pictures was,
even with a Travarian.
yeah, it was cracking. That was probably the most information / condensed into a nice area. And like, so I turned off those LEDs. I brought my paint lamp downstairs into that setup, and because it's a proper like it's the Lightcraft Pro, so it's like a really, it's a daylight bulb, right? You don't need that, but like you could do it with an IKEA lamp or whatever. And then I angled it so it was over the top but towards the front, and that way it's going to allow it to pick up, so the light's going to allow and show the highlighting that you have done. And if you've done any airbrush fades, because these have all got airbrush fades on them, you can see them. Because if you just take the picture with the light splashed forward onto the model or down from the top, you don't quite get it. And then for the DSLR camera bit, I think you can sort of do this with your phone, but what I learned was to turn the ISO as low as you can, and then usually use an auto white balance setting, because I'm not a photographer, like you could go all day and just really refine things, but changing that ISO, making sure that lamp is nice and bright, and then the ISO will cut that down and it'll hopefully show your highlights. It took a lot of trial and error. I've took about 150 pictures today.
That's what I was trying to achieve with my phone on mine, but
Yeah.
I haven't done it enough times to figure it out properly. I don't think I had enough lighting in the situation, and I do have a pro mode on my phone, but like it goes from being press button to take photo to here's loads of stats and buttons and flashy bits and like a spectrograph and everything. I'm like, that's too much information. I want the middle bit.
You've got a DSLR there.
So I deliberately got a DSLR because I was tired of using a phone and trying to achieve the standard I wanted it to. Because like, yeah, you've got all those stats, you've got all those buttons, that's fine. But if you don't want to mess with that, messes with itself. It tries to sort out its white balance. It focuses on the wrong thing. It's designed to take photos of people at parties, and long distance photos. And if we're going to be like completely serious, modern phones are much better at getting like multiple people's skin tones, but primarily they're designed to take photos of people that happen to look like us because we were the test parameter.
Pale nerds,
basically. So like I was tired of it trying to adjust to get the exact thing that I wanted. So I went for this, and I've set it to an ISO 100 with f8, and the reasoning for that was because that was the best way I could have lights in the light box to max, and then just adjust it to what I needed. I spoke to Dr. Rhino about how he does his photos, and Matt Yee. Both of them were like, these needs to be higher, this needs to be lower. And Matt Yee is so much better at photos than most people I know. But the thing is, the limitations of your camera dictates what you can actually achieve with that. So there were certain things I just could not do with this camera.
Yeah.
But with that, you're able to change your aperture and all the rest, and just adjust everything. You go further back if you have to, or really close if you have to, all the rest of it. And
it's a lot of experimentation, definitely.
yeah, but with my light box, I've got magnetized LED strips that I put at the front. Now, if I'm taking a photo of a flat thing, there's a hole in the top, and I literally put them on the top, and I've got this uniform light going down. But the thing you want to eliminate is all possible shadows, whilst massively like getting your light on the front of the model, because if you've got no shadows, it looks like the back is completely irrelevant.
Yeah.
I've got two different angles. It's not like one ring light in the middle and then you've got like this blatant shadow on both sides. No, it's one side the side. But when I was speaking to Phoenix Miniature Art about this, he was like, right, that's wrong. You don't want them at the front. That's weird. You want to have it in all directions facing down at the model so that you eliminate all directions of shadow. And there are limitations to what we can do without the best equipment. So I've stuck with what I've got. Still got two LED strips. They're pointed at 45-degree angles towards the model, and they eliminate each other's shadows, but not as much as, say, a proper rig.
There you go. We've all learned something today, guys.
Yeah. And a DSLR is really good for that kind of thing. But the newer DSLRs are the ones where you can actually like connect that to Facebook, connect that to email, and then send the files to yourself.
Oh my god,
instead
that
of having
sounds
to
so much
faff around
easier.
with the
Yeah,
like,
I've got
one of these. That into my phone, because if you plug it straight into your computer, Instagram is terrible for posting photos.
It is.
So you might as well put it straight onto your phone and then post it, because then you can do a multi. Like
Yeah, I've got a Canon EOS 350D, which is a DSLR camera.
Yeah.
But it is a really old DSLR camera.
Yeah,
like, what megapixel is that one you've got in your hand there?
And I can look it up.
And like, then how much difference does that make?
20.3 megapixels.
See, because I'm pretty sure the one I've got is like 8.
Yeah, that's not high enough. That's not high
No,
enough. Oh,
and but then I've got like this phone has like a macro mode and all that sort of stuff, and it'll do a 48 megapixel JPEG file if I wanted to, which sounds insane. I don't know why I'd ever want to take a photo like that, but it does enormous photos. Size and space
you can adjust
taken
the
wise
size
is what I
of
mean.
the photo.
There's a
Oh yeah,
weird
no, I know I can. I'm just saying it's got the capacity to be mental. But what I'm wondering is at the end of the day, is it the lens on those cameras that makes more difference than the lens? Like you said before, this is a phone camera. I do have a pro mode. I do have a portrait mode. I do have like a landscape and close-up macro mode, etc. But at the end of the day, it's still a phone camera. Well,
phone
is a
cameras
proper
can be
camera
really, really good. Like some of the best camera work I've seen has been phone. There are people who've got like clips that do fisheye lens on top of the phone. They just literally clip on a lens over the top, and it holds in place. You've got you've also got like in both of your photos, I've had a look, and with Vulkan's one, it's kind of balanced, but it's very, very dark. It's hard to make out.
That's it. I wanted to add more, I think.
The ones I've taken are just awful. They're not. There's not enough lighting on them. I know that for certain.
Well,
it's kind of.
It's actually a little weirder than that, Kitbash, because of the contrast you've got there. You've got a really bright top light and everything else is dark. And I'm a bit flashed out right now, overexposed, but that's because I adjust that manually on OBS. We're on Discord. I can't do anything about this right now.
Yeah. No, that's fine.
But on yours, because there's very little front light, it looks incredibly focused on the top. Like, it's harder to see details in the picture.
Yeah, I think I might just pull Vulkan forward in my light box, because so I'm using the lamp I'm not using the LEDs in the light box. So I think the top of the light box was perhaps obscuring because I put Vulkan in the middle, while maybe on some of the other ones I may have brought them forward automatically.
Yeah, and I found that if I put the model all the way to the back of the box, you eliminate the shadows even more. As long as you've got it with your camera taking as it is, you've got a good distance, then you don't have like the camera inside the box causing its own shadows, because the model's that far back, it doesn't matter anymore.
I think when I've done it before with a proper light box, I've had more success. Though the light box I've got is this teeny tiny little one. I've got like a few like a black.
That's bigger than my
smaller than that. Mine's like a quarter of the size of that. The one I've got, but I've got some like old benches and things, and then some black curtains that I'm tempted to try and use those instead, just to sort of get a
That's what
an infinity
Trovarian
curve
said.
type thing.
Don't use a light
Yeah.
box. He said don't use it at all. Literally put like a big bit of card, A3 card, black background, you know, get a bit of black cloth, and then have your lamp.
It was something about like contrast up, light down, or something like that. I can't remember what the exact words were. I'm just gonna have to sit down and mess around with the phone and see what it does until I get a proper one. Write it all down, because I'm sure it'll probably reset itself every time I turn off the camera. So
forward angle on the light towards the model, you get
Yep.
more of the details shown. If it's directly above, you're only getting the top bit of the model being relevant to the
I think it
photo.
was, yeah, it would have been. So when I took it, it would have been like just there, rather than like, I'm just guessing you're meaning like that kind of.
Yeah, because if you get
It
an
was
angle,
up here, but it was probably about there, I would say. It should be more over here.
like more of the body where you actually put effort in filigree, other areas just empty light.
Yeah.
You can't see. Like there's a
Unless
like
this bit's awful.
Zenithal to suggest an upwards, and then actually making a zenithal which washes out the top so much you can't see the rest. So
Yeah.
If you've got forward light and you've painted it to look zenithal, it looks like there's a light above it, even though there isn't.
Yeah,
That's
they're
true.
getting your lighting right so that you can then show that you've painted that. Because most of the time with the phone, it doesn't show what you're trying to do properly.
Exactly. Because it'll focus on what it feels like for the phone.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, just to wrap us up, Phil has just commented a little brain teaser for us to solve.
Oh, yeah.
How did the Emperor not see the betrayal coming if Horus's surname was heresy? They try not to laugh. I enjoyed that one.
Mr. Harrison.
Thank you, Phil.
Thanks, Phil.
Yeah, well, his surname's Horace Lupercal, Phil, so you know that. You're just trying to
Get it right,
some
Phil.
traps for people, aren't you?
Wait. Has anyone got a Trilby hat? I need to say actually.
Yeah. Well, just to wrap us up, like we're going to be posting up some of these 2022 roundups. So we've got a little spoiler one from Merlin here. Some of the bits he's been working on, some of them we've showed today on the podcast, and then he's got his Sergeant Hargo, his assassin, and an Orky boy. So all these are fantastic, mate. You've had a cracking year of painting by the looks of it.
Yeah, and I've thoroughly enjoyed it. Like I wouldn't have been able to do half the stuff that's in that photo as well as I have if it hadn't been for the advice of other painters who have gladly looked at a thing, gone, no, I'd do this with it, and then explained why. The Twitch painting community, the Instagram, even like YouTube as well, just everyone wants everyone else to be better at painting, and they're just, as long as you're not a horrible person about it, they're patient and willing to tell you because they want to see your work.
Yeah.
It's especially during the cosplay scene as well, 40k, because they don't care about them being the first person to do the thing. They want to see 20 Space Marines walking around, and they're only one person, so they will give you templates if they want.
But it's the inclusivity of it is fantastic. It's a great. It is honestly is a great community. Like we couldn't ask for a better community in many respects. Yeah.
As a side, just then, I was just about to try and post a picture. I just took a photo just then, just quickly, using a tiny snippet of the advice you just gave me then, by holding the lamp vertically like this, and then taking a picture at a sensible distance so the full thing was lit up. I then did the contrast and the exposure thing that I was on about before. Perfectly crisp miniature. You can see the gradient exactly, and then I went send, and my phone went shutting down.
That's the last one we'll quickly look at.
No. Put it in the thing. Let the people at home see it. That's just not.
No. Literally, as soon as I pressed the send message on Discord, my phone went shutting down and shut down. So
Typical.
we'll have to wait till next
Well,
time for that one.
you could post that up another time, but
I'll put it on my Instagram.
honestly, Merlin, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's been a bit
Yeah,
sporadic and difficult to organise, but we really appreciate you coming on, mate. And we'll
Yeah,
definitely
that's
be
on
able to do
me.
it again.
Thanks for having me.
You're more than welcome to. Yeah, but it's just a casual chat podcast. If anybody who has watched today, want to subscribe and like, that'd be fantastic. All those good things for the algorithm. But you'll be seeing more of this. We're hoping to do this every week, Merlin. So we will definitely be having you on again, mate.
All right.
Yeah.
You can catch me on Mondays on Twitch.
You can, yeah. So
Yeah,
I was going to say, give us all your deets so peeps know where to find you.
So my Twitch is MerlynModels. The same handle applies for Instagram, TikTok. I usually post whether or not I will or won't be streaming onto my Instagram. And if I'm not on a certain Monday, I will have said why. And it's always like 4:30 p.m. UK time.
So you can catch him there.
enjoy
Great
the fun.
stream. And we'll post all those details as well in the description of the video. So thanks everybody.
Yeah.
I've been Vulcan. He's been Kitbash. He's
It's
been
me.
Merlin. Catch you next time, guys.
Bye.
I have to turn this off.
What's that? Are we